a greedy upstart who seduced the Duke with her beauty in order to bathe in luxury. That's what everyone thought about Rowan Philoduke Callion's mistress. The woman asks if she's seen Ravenna, and also wants to know how she likes the handbag. The woman replies she's speechless and asks if she's seen the dress, then says it's from Harden's boutique, and she's been waiting for hers for 3 months. The lady in the green dress suggests looking at the earrings and necklace because she thinks it looks like the Duke gave her family jewelry. The Marchioness says that all the men are drooling over this girl, and it makes her sick. She understands, of course, that the Duke of Devonshire is rich and influential, but she wonders if she has any dignity at all. The Countess says that even if she dresses like an empress, she is just a mistress and has no future. The lady agrees with her and claims that she is speaking correctly, and then asks where he dug up this slut, since no one knows where she comes from. The butler turns to Miss Falloon and informs her that his lordship is waiting in the carriage. Hearing this, the ladies were surprised, because they had no idea that she was anywhere nearby. The main character says that she is going, and then quickly gets into the carriage. The Duke looked at the young lady and asked what was wrong this time, and then said that he had fulfilled her request. The lady apologizes because she didn't want to upset him, and then claims that everything is fine, and that he shouldn't worry. Ravenna says that he can't even imagine how grateful she is that he was able to find time for her. The girl says that she really liked the opera, but at that moment, Callion touches her face and asks why she frowned. The man tells her to answer, and then asks if she thinks he will grovel before his mistress. At this time, the main character remembered the lady's words, and then explains that she is a little tired. Killian says that since she herself knows that she is at fault, he orders her to accept punishment. Rowana slapped his hand away, and he tells her to film it with her mouth, and asks if she wants to apologize. The girl objects and says what she wants, and then she takes off his gloves with her lips. When the gentleman looked at the lady, it excited him, and he began to kiss her. The next day, the maid tells the mistress that it looks like the Duke had a good time yesterday because he sent her a bouquet and new shoes, and then asks if she liked it. Miss says that she also had a good time, and the maid says that she is jealous because she couldn't save up for the cheapest ticket even in 3 months. After all, it was an example since the prima donna herself performed. Ravenna, surprised, asks if she really wanted to go that badly. The maid replies that she really did, and that her brother always teased her because she always dreamed of becoming an opera singer. The maid combs her mistress's hair and asks what she dreamed of becoming. The main character thought for a bit and then said that she wanted to become a writer. The maid asks if her uncle is a famous writer. The lady replies that he is the famous Jeremy Dish. Ravenna remembered her uncle's words about how he told her that he would always be glad to see her. The maid screams and says that he writes detective stories, and she has heard a lot about him, and also wonders if it is true that he lives in seclusion and never appears in public. The maid says that she is interested in what he looks like, and thinks that he is probably handsome if he looks a little like her. Miss says that who knows, because she is also interested in whether they will meet again, and then says that the last time she saw him was 3 years ago, right before she boarded the train to the capital, driven by dreams of becoming a writer. The main character thought about what would have happened if she hadn't met the Duke then, or even on the contrary, if she hadn't trusted her friend who convinced her to leave. At this time, the estate's housekeeper, Madame Gertrude, enters the room and asks to be allowed in, as she has something to tell her. The woman apologizes for disturbing her at such an early hour, and then says that she has to go to Rockford. The main character is surprised to hear this, and then says it's too early. The housekeeper explains that the schedule has changed slightly. The main character thought that maybe something had happened, and then asked if the Duke was coming too. The woman replies that he's not coming. Meanwhile, the main character thinks she can't ask him why he's staying. The housekeeper says that she will tell the maids to prepare everything for departure, and informs that the mistress is leaving the day after tomorrow at lunchtime. Madame Gertrude tells the lady that there's a letter for her from the publishing company. Hearing this, the girl is delighted and then thanks her. The housekeeper went to the Duke's office and reported that she had conveyed his messages to Miss Falloon. The gentleman says it's a good job and then tells her she can go. Hearing this, the woman claims it's just in time for him to send her away. He asks what the ladies mean. Madame Gertrude reports that the Marchioness of Essex aunt told her that the Queen recently invited the daughter of a foreign magnate who turns out to be ripe for marriage. The woman says that she added that he probably knows what this must mean, since he is an intelligent person. The Duke says that she is the daughter of a magnate, and as he sees it, she has finally taken on the role of matchmaker, and he is interested in what she is trying to get in return for selling him out. Hearing this, the maid was surprised, and the master said that he believed that Miss Filona had completed her task and asked if she was now useless. At this point, the Duke remembered that the Queen had asked him if this was his way of rebelling against her. Killian said he was afraid because he didn't understand what she meant. Her Majesty asks if he really thought she wouldn't notice the resemblance between his mistress and her late fiancé. The Duke assures that he does not care about the deceased and then says that Rowena will never become a duchess and will never bear his child. The Queen asks what he wants. Then Callian replies that he wants her to stop trying to marry off foreign princesses and the daughters of rich men to him. Her Majesty says she believes he'll soon grow tired of this girl anyway. And so after some time, Rowena began to be treated as the Duke's companion. However, 3 years later, the Duke thought that the Queen was probably angry because he was not even going to get rid of his mistress. The housekeeper reports that one of the marriageable girls is also a green-eyed blonde, and the Marquise saw her with her own eyes, and according to him, she even looks more like his bride than Miss Filone. Hearing this, the gentleman smiled, and then told Gertrude that he had already forgotten what she looked like. Callian doesn't understand why everyone thinks he's in love with someone he only saw once, and even then as a child, and then he thinks he can't blame them. The gentleman recalls that he did meet Rowena when he was returning from the funeral. Gertrude asks if he is going to get rid of her, and then assures him that she is of no use. Callian claims that she belongs to him, and then asks why he would part with his beloved pet. The housekeeper says that because of her, he will never find a bride. The Duke says that his mother died a long time ago, and then asks if he is confused about something. Hearing this, the woman apologized, and the gentleman said he did and told her to leave. Gertrude asked if she could say anything else, and then said she thought Miss Filona was cheating on him. Hearing this, the gentleman broke his pen, because he never imagined that he would hear such a thing. The next day, the maid asks her mistress in surprise what they are doing on Harlem Street, since she knows that they went out for groceries, and also asks where she got the men's clothes in her bag. Rowena took the maid by the hands and asked her to promise not to tell anyone. The main character says that when her parents went on their honeymoon, which they had been postponing for a long time, they caught some kind of infection and died suddenly. The girl explains that none of her relatives cared about the orphan, and in the end, her mother's younger brother, Uncle Jeremy, agreed to look after her. The lady reports that for the next 20 years, she lived in the suburbs in almost complete isolation, until one day she received a letter inviting her to the capital. A friend writes that she can send her work to any capital city publisher and calmly wait for a response at her home. Ravana says she jumped on a train without a second thought and went to a completely unfamiliar place. However, her friend left her with a mountain of debt, and she had to constantly hide from debt collectors. The friend asked for forgiveness, and then said that she had no other choice, because her uncle earns well, and she is sure that the girl will cover all the debts. The main character says that she never dared to ask him for help, because he dissuaded her from going to the capital. While she was hiding, the man said to search every nook and cranny, because he believed that she could not have gone far. The girl says she should have listened to her uncle, but at that moment, a carriage stops and the Duke emerges. He offers her his hand and invites her to come with him. The main character agreed, and thus found herself there as the most elegant and vulgar woman. The young lady realizes that if she hadn't believed her friend's letter, and if she hadn't followed him that night, she realizes that perhaps she could have started her relationship with Killian on the right foot. Ravana believes that perhaps their relationship could have developed differently, but she understands that he is not the type to confess his love, but she knows that he loves her, and she loves him. The main character dreams of becoming a successful writer, to repay her debt, and become his equal, and then explains to the maid that this is why she sent her work. The maid says in surprise that she had no idea, and then asks why she would dress up as a man. The lady explains that it's just a precaution, knowing she might not be recognized, and then asks the maid if she won't tell anyone. The maid assures her that she's keeping her mouth shut. The main character dresses up as a man and tells the president of the publishing company, William, that she is Philip McCartney. The director suggests getting straight to the point and then says that he liked his draft, but would like to make some corrections. William explains that he likes his style, but the story feels disconnected from reality as the main character only gets to a very limited number of places. Exclusive restaurants, five-star hotels, and luxury yachts. The director says he describes them beautifully and can already see girls reading his book and dreaming of visiting. He then asks if the general public will appreciate it. The man suggests adding, for example, noisy bars, parks bathed in sun, and a blooming lakeshore, because he understands that this will make it easier for the reader to associate with the heroes. The main character says that he has never been to such places. William says that then he has a chance to try them out for himself and suggests meeting tomorrow at noon in Conwell Park. The director says that he has another meeting scheduled right after this and suggests that he leave now and then reminds him not to forget about the park tomorrow. When the main character returned to the carriage, the maid asked how everything went and inquired whether she had signed the contract. Rowena says she's unsure, and the maid, surprised, asks what they were talking about. She replies that she doesn't want to go into details now and will tell you later. Duke Killian was generous to his mistress, and he was patient enough to overlook minor mistakes. The man reflected that he had always spoken to her and treated her with a certain level of respect, despite the fact that she was below him in social status. Moreover, he never kept Rowena locked up, forbidding her to ever leave the castle. But there was one rule that could never be broken. The girl was supposed to wait for him in the bedroom when he returned home. In the evening, the main character was met by the housekeeper, who said that she was late, and then reported that the Duke was waiting for her. The young lady says that he must have returned early today, and then says that she will first tidy herself up. Madame Gertrude reports that he told her to come to him as soon as she returned. At this time, the Duke was enjoying wine. When the girl entered the room, she said he had returned early. Killian says that sometimes this happens, and then invites her to sit next to him. At this point, the protagonist realizes he's just returned and hasn't even changed yet, and then asks why he's drinking alone. The Duke says that he once had a dog and then pours wine into the glass in a thin stream, and goes on to say that it was a gift from the Queen, and she was a beautiful hound with a shiny black coat. The gentleman says that she was graceful and smart enough to understand all his commands. And then he gives her a piece of cheese and says that this dog was so smart that it returned the birds he shot before he ordered it to do so. The man reports that something happened one day, and the girl asks in surprise, "What exactly?" He reports that the dog broke loose from its chain and ran away. Rowena asks if she ever came back. He replies that she did, but not before she mated with some mongrel and got pregnant. Her belly was bulging, and she rubbed her face against his leg as if nothing had happened. Killian says that he waited for her to give birth, and he found a mongrel similar to those puppies and killed them all in front of her. Hearing this, the main character was surprised, and the man said that his dog then tried to bite him, and that's why he killed it too, and then explains that since then he hasn't had a dog. The Duke turns to the lady and says that he will show no mercy to the dog that betrayed him. At this time, the main character looked at the gentleman and thought that he knew that she went to the publishing company this morning. Killian claims that if it was nothing more than a momentary indiscretion, he could let it slide, and then says that regarding her move to Rockford, it looks like they'll have to postpone it a bit. The gentleman explains that he will soon be very busy, so he will not stay here for long, and hopes that she will be a good girl until the ball is over. The next morning, the maid tells her mistress that it is time to get up, and then reminds her that she has a meeting today, and it is already noon. Melissa asks if she's meeting someone from the publishing company at the park today. Hearing this, the girl, surprised, asks if she told her she was dating him. She replies that she did. Rowena says that if she thinks about it, she doesn't think she should go, because she knows the Duke is already unhappy with her, and so she doesn't want to make things worse by doing something that could be misinterpreted. The maid tells the miss that she has to confess something, and then says that she read her manuscript yesterday, and it is not the one she brought to the publishing house, but the other one that was in her bag, and then apologizes. The mistress assures Melissa that everything is fine. Hearing this, the maid was delighted, and then touched the mistress's hand. She says that she may not understand anything about writing, but she can say that she is exceptionally talented. Melissa says she wouldn't want her to miss this rare opportunity, and then says they can record her today and asks who knows. The maid claims that this may be her only chance, and if she returns to Rockford, she will have to stay there for 6 months. Therefore, she believes that this is a waste of time. The main character grabbed the girl by the shoulders and said she was right, then announced that she would go. She offered to do so because she didn't think she should be there this time, but she considered it an important matter. Melissa suggests that the lady not worry, and if she tells her where she meets him, she will accompany her on the way there and back. The maid said that since she would be away all the time, Madame Gertrude wouldn't suspect anything. Hearing this, the lady smiled and thanked her. The main character quickly changed into a guy, and then went to meet the publisher. Sitting in a restaurant, the director says what a typical date consists of, and then shows the contract he placed on the table. The girl says she thought he didn't really like her story. The director counters, saying he said he liked the tone and writing style. William says that he accepted his offer and came here today, and this means that they have great potential for growth, and then gives her a flower. Ravana, surprised, asks why he's giving her flowers. He replies that it's to congratulate him on signing the contract. And the guy asks in surprise if he gives flowers to everyone. William explains that this is his first contract, and every time a writer signs his first contract with them, he gives him a rose. The main character was surprised, and then said that he was embarrassed. Then she takes the rose and thanks him. The director reports that after he put his seal on the contract, they agreed to communicate through Melissa from now on, and that is the end of their business for today. After some time, the maid asks the mistress how the writing is going, and says that she brought her something to eat. Rowena smiled, and then announced that she was almost finished. Melissa reports that Madame Gertrude says that the Duke is not in the capital at the moment, and thinks that this is good since the lady has more time to work on the manuscript. The maid says that she hasn't heard from him for a week, and understands that usually when he leaves for a long time, he tells her about it in advance, or always contacts her and asks if it seems strange. Rowena thinks he must be very busy. That evening, lying in bed, the young lady became curious about the Duke. Suddenly, she wanted a drink of water, but stopped at the door because she overheard a conversation about Duke Killian attending the previous day's banquet with the Count's second daughter, Vanessa. The girl peeked and saw the maids talking about this. One of them said that given his age, she would not be surprised at all if this time he was seriously planning to get married, since she knows that he has not worked for a long time. The maid says that this is true, because until now, his aunt, the Marchioness of Essex, managed the country house on his behalf. But she is getting on in years, and she wonders what will happen to Miss Falonde. The maid says she is sure he will pay her to leave, because she believes that people may not talk about it openly, but no one in their right mind would give their daughter to someone who has a mistress living with him, and what kind of nobleman would create such a scandal? The maid asks if she thinks the queen would like her nephew to marry someone better than the count's daughter. And as far as she understands, Duke Killian is still in love with his fiancée, who died 3 years ago, and that is why he has remained unmarried all this time. Another maid says she heard about it too, and thinks it was obviously amazing, because a man who can't forget his first love squeals with joy, and thinks it's very romantic. Hearing this, the main character staggered, and the maids became frightened and wondered what that sound was. Rowena turned over an empty bucket she hadn't seen. The maid insisted there was someone in there, and her friend asked if she thought it was Miss Rowena. The maid says that she doubts it, but will go and check, and then enters the room and asks if there is anyone there. At this time, the girl tripped, and she doesn't know what to do because she thinks that they might notice her. The housekeeper entered the room and asked why they were all there instead of working. The girls were surprised to see her, then apologized, explaining they were just talking. The woman insisted that no matter what they were talking about, they needed to be quieter, and then she saw an open door and pushed it. Gertrude turns to the maids and informs them that if she catches them again, it will be their last day here, and then tells them to get back to work. At this time, the main character who hid behind the door was very scared because she did not want to be noticed, and when the woman left, she sighed with relief. The next day, the maid wishes good luck to her mistress, who is dressed as a man, and then says that when she publishes her first book, you will expect a copy from hers. Rowena says that of course she will give them several copies. When the main character was left alone, she remembered the words of the maids that the Duke was in love with his bride, who died 3 years ago, but she believed that this was just a rumor. The girl reflects on the fact that for 3 years she lived as Killian's lover and never noticed any signs that he had actually forgotten his first love. The main character remembers with tenderness how he always took care of her. William asks if he has thought about his proposal, and the girl replies that he has thought about it a lot and hands over her manuscripts. The director offers to take a look, and at that moment, he remembered the words of Gertrude, who gave him money to pretend, but he must admit that this lady's manuscripts are much better than he imagined. The man understands that in this world, money solves everything, and he touched the manuscript and said that it was wonderful, and as soon as the editing was finished, they could publish it immediately. The girl was delighted to hear this and asked if it was true. The man assured her it was true and that he wasn't joking, then opened the window. The director looked out onto the street and thought that he had known she was being followed. At this time, the Duke was invited into the room, and he saw the half-naked illegitimate son of Count Felix. When the guy saw the Count, he was surprised, and then asked what he owes to such an honor. The gentleman says that as far as he can see, Felix still lives like trash. The guy asks if that surprises him. The girls remind him to invite them again, and the guy says that they will see each other soon. The Count asks the young gentleman what he has for him. He replies that the gentleman was right, and that illegal alcohol imports are taking place in the southern port. He then puts on his robe. Killian says that he knew this because after the Queen banned the import of alcohol, only authorized people are allowed to import alcohol. Smuggling alcohol was a serious punishable crime, with all property confiscated and even death sentences. But some people still tried to import alcohol despite the risks. The reason was simple, and it was a very profitable business. The guy asks what he's going to do, because he told him to find out about it carefully, and he thinks that means he's not going to act like the secret police. The Duke says he's going to take it all for himself. Hearing this, the young man is surprised and asks if he's talking about betraying the Queen, considering it a huge risk, and not the one to warn him. Then he asks if his own isn't enough. Killian says that he is not interested in money, but only in power, so that no one tells him what to do, and then he clenches his fist. The gentleman says the power rivals that of the Queen. The young man says it's clear to him, and then asks if he wants to increase his influence in the shadows. The gentleman reminds him that he didn't ask him to find out something else. The young man says that before he tells him, he can ask what it is. The guy reports that he heard that this gentleman, the president of the publishing house, and someone were following him, and they went to the park, and then to a restaurant with Miss Philoe disguised as a man. The young man says that for some reason Miss Philoe was dressed as a man, and that they supposedly talked about the manuscript and then shows a photo of their meeting. At this time, the Duke thought that the pieces of the puzzle had finally come together. The guy asks where the Lord orders him to go, and he replies that he should go to where Miss Philoe is, and then says that he needs someone to keep an eye on Gertrude. The fair-haired young man asks if the gentleman wants him to find a man. He agrees with him and says that it should be a quiet and inconspicuous man. The assistant reminds that the Marchioness of Essex is arriving today, and thinks that she must have already arrived. When Auntie saw Killian, she happily hugged him. He asked how Auntie was feeling, and she replied that she was wonderful, absolutely fine, and then reported that she had spoken with the Queen. When the Duke saw Philona, he asked if she had been slapped. The aunt turns to the lady and says that her master asked her a question. Meanwhile, the main character remembered the conversation about how the madam said that because of her, Killian's reputation was ruined, and asked if she knew about it. The woman claims that he is young and has needs, and that is why she tolerates her, because she believes that it is better for him to sleep with her than with just anyone. And the aunt suggests that the girl simply remember to take birth control, because if she gets pregnant, she will disgrace him even more, and she will not tolerate that. Ravana says that he really cares about her hearing this. The woman was surprised, and the girl says that if she gets pregnant from him, she will no longer decide anything here. Hearing this, the Marquise hit the main character. At this time, the lady explains that she behaved stupidly in front of Mrs. Essex, and claims that this is all. Hearing this, the young gentleman was surprised, and then turned to his aunt and asked if she could explain how his stupid, ill-mannered mistress had shown disrespect to his beloved aunt. The Marquise was surprised, and Madame Gertrude turned to his lordship and asserted that he must have misunderstood everything. The Duke reminds her that she said the girl was being disrespectful, and that he is simply trying to find out what happened, and also wondering what he misunderstood. Gertrude says that when Miss Philoe was going down the stairs, She spilled tea on the Marquise's coat, and it happened by accident, and the Marquise was a little scared. Essex says she was simply teaching her a lesson because the girl dared to spill tea on her. Rowana turns to the Duke and says that Madame Gertrude is telling the truth because her hand shook and she made a mistake, and for this she was slapped. The lady says she's fine and asks him not to be angry. The guy tells the lady to close her eyes and ears and go upstairs. Killian rolled up his sleeves and then broke the cup and said that it was an accident, but the Marquise asked him not to do it. The gentleman asks if she didn't want his mother's tea set, which she received from the Queen, and then suggests that she catch it since it is his gift for her lesson. The Duke began throwing cups at the door, and they quickly broke while the Marquise stood and asked for help. The gentleman says that she didn't catch a single one, and he's very sorry, and then says that he remembers that she also exchanged glances with these swords. At this time, the main character runs up to him and hugs him from behind, then asks him to stop and do it for her, and explains that she is afraid and claims that it is all her fault. Killian reminds her that he told her to go upstairs, and then takes her in his arms, at which time the girl loses consciousness. When the main character opened her eyes, she saw that she was lying in bed, and there was a maid next to her. Melissa says that thank God she woke up and offers to drink some water. Rowana thanks her and then asks where she is. The maid explains that it's another Devonshire family estate and that she's never been there either. The lady surprised asks how she got there. Melissa says she knew the mistress would ask because she assumed she wouldn't remember, and then reports that, according to the local maids, the Duke carried her in his arms last night while she was unconscious. The main character asks what happened to the Marquise and Madame Gertrude. At that moment, a maid enters and informs her that her name is Bianca, and that she is the manager of this estate. Hearing this, the lady thought that if she was the manager, then she was a member of the same circle as Madame Gertrude. Bianca said that she would bring the lady breakfast, and a few minutes later she brought food on a cart. Rowana was surprised, because these were her favorite dishes, and the maid said that she was glad that she liked it and smiled, and then suggested that she not get up because she brought her a tray so that she could eat comfortably. The girl asks where the Duke is now. The housekeeper replies that he left early in the morning to discuss this year's taxes with the king's deputy and said he'll be back by lunchtime. Bianca tells the lady that if she needs anything, she should ring the bell that is on the table. The main character thought about how she'd never been treated like this before and didn't even know how to react. She recalls how the previous maids always whispered, then she tells them not to speak to her so respectfully. Melissa asks the mistress why she's acting this way since she thinks she deserves it. Bianca agrees, saying she's right, and that the Duke told them to take good care of her. The housekeeper says that while Miss Falone is here, she wants her to feel at home, and the lady thanks her. The housekeeper greeted his lordship. He asked if there was any news, and she replied that there was nothing special. When the Duke saw the girl, he extended his hand to her and asked if she had eaten lunch yet. The girl replied that she hadn't yet, and he suggested they dine together wherever she wanted. At this time, the main character thought that she expected him to reproach her for her intervention yesterday, but since this did not happen, she happily agreed. The gentleman asks the lady how she likes her new home. Rowana says it's beautiful and even bigger than she expected. Killian asks, "What about Bianca and the maids?" And the girl insists they're all very kind to her. And then she thinks about how the Duke always gave her the best. Unlike other aristocrats, he doesn't throw expensive parties or boast about his wealth. But today he's booked an entire restaurant, and that makes her a little scared. The Duke says that from now on, she will live there for the duration of the balls. She agrees with his grace, and then asks what has become of Madame Gertrude and the Marchioness of Essex. The gentleman replies that disciplinary measures have been taken against Madame Gertrude, and the Marquise is going on leave to improve her health for 6 months, and therefore believes that she will never see them again. At this time, the main character thought that she was very happy because she thought that he would treat them more harshly. Killian looked at the girl and thought about how she was a pure, generous village girl and a bitch who seduced a man, and he wondered how much of it was true and how much was a lie. The Duke asks the lady if she knows a man named William. Upon hearing this, she is surprised, and the man asks why she is silent. The girl became interested in whether it was possible to tell him the truth, and she thinks that maybe he won't believe her, because at first he behaves normally, and then does something like that time on vacation. Ravana recalls the man asking her to walk her to the mansion and hold her umbrella. She agreed and thanked him. Suddenly, the worker left the island and the store closed. Lady believes that if she tells him the truth, either Melissa will be fired or the publishing house will go bankrupt. The girl says that William is an old friend of hers who came to the city for a few days and she met him once. The Duke says she was dressed as a man. Hearing this, the young lady was surprised because she realized that he knew about that meeting and then explained that they just had lunch together and there was nothing between them. Killian asks if she's saying he's an old acquaintance. In the evening when the girl was taking a bath, she thought that the conversation about William had ruined the whole evening, and neither of them had spoken on the way home. Rowana thought he was angry. The maid saw her worried mistress and asked if she was feeling unwell. She assured him everything was fine and that she simply felt like she ate too much at dinner. The main character thought about the fact that Killian found out about her plan and believes that if this was the reason, he would not have asked her, as if he wanted to check something, because he understands that he would have already taken action. At this moment, the master entered the bathroom and then turned to the maid and ordered her to leave them. The maid quickly ran away. The man touched the girl's face and lifted it slightly. She asked if she had done something wrong. The Duke replies that everything is fine and looks at the girl. Then he lifts her from the bath and kisses her. After this, the main character asks if he loves her, and when he doesn't answer, she asks if he loves her and wants a little. Ravana realizes she can't help but ask him because she's starting to doubt his love for her. She asks if he's tired of her and will leave her. The Duke says he knows. Meanwhile, the girl thought he must have misunderstood her reaction in the restaurant. The lady thinks that if she confesses her feelings to him and tells the truth, then maybe, and then she turns to him. But the gentleman interrupts her and tells her to be quiet as a mouse, because then he won't get tired of her. When the Duke arrived at the appointed place, he told the man that he was repeating the same thing over and over again, and that he was starting to get tired of it. The gentleman reminds that he asked him who he works for, and then asks if it is difficult to answer, and suggests that maybe he is dumber than he thought. Killian claims that he played his subordinate well and stole their information little by little, and therefore believes that he is not a fool and asks this or that. The assistant asks for forgiveness, and then informs his lordship that the Southerners are smart, and he wonders who would have thought that they would foresee that he would be involved in this. The guy claims that killing him won't give the master anything. He asks who said he'd kill him, and waves his gun. And then there's a shot. The man screaming in pain says that his leg hurts. His Majesty says he's screaming like a slaughtered pig, and then asks what they should do. The aide says that could be perceived as a declaration of war. The gentleman claims that they received a gift, and it would be rude if they did not reciprocate. The assistant claims that they can still resolve this through negotiations. And the wounded man tells Killian that he can predict his fate, and then says that he will die a terrible death, and his tramp will be passed around until she. Having heard this, the gentleman no longer heard anything but fired a shot, and he turns to the man and offers to finish his sentence. The Duke says he has changed his mind, and then orders his body to be cut into pieces and thrown into the harbor. Killian understands that the old man will make a scandal when he sees it. When the man saw this, he turned to his lordship and told him not to report that he was the one who shot the spy in the head. He then asked what the Jenko assistant was doing and wondered if he was simply standing there and watching. The old man says that he knows that he is just a dog who has not been taught anything in life, but he understands that this is no excuse to allow his master to dirty his hands with the red liquid. Mr. Sussex says it appears he paid him far more money than he deserves, while Janoch, Killian's right-hand man, Baron Benedict Sussex, protected Killian from childhood and was the one who helped the Earl come into the world. Unlike Janoch, who came from poverty, Benedict was the embodiment of aristocracy. The Baron says that's why scumbags like him can't be trusted. Janoch asks the gentleman if he's implying he wants to die. Sussex says the dog has finally started baring its teeth. The Duke says that's enough, and suggests discussing their next step. The Baron reports that the Glitters firm they secretly opened for financial activities is increasingly arousing suspicion, and believes that the only way to avoid this is to accept the Queen's marriage proposal. Killian says that he thought this conversation was already in the past, and he was the one who was most against it. The Baron agrees with him, and then says that there is another reason why he should accept the offer, and then says that every day they attract more and more attention. The man says that if the queen finds out that he is organizing a rebellion behind her back, Miss Falone's safety will be at risk. The Duke asks if he's implying that he should live like a royal puppy, Sussex objects, and explains that he means that the Lord can use this to his advantage and pretend to accept proposals. The Baron says he can use the woman the Queen chose for him to distract attention from things people shouldn't know. The man reminds that he said that he wanted to consolidate his power among ordinary people so that no one would dare tell him what to do, and then asks if he has forgotten about it. Killian says of course not, and then smiles. Although the Devonshire family was a noble family with a long history of authority and wealth, everything came to an end when it began to exert a strong influence on Easelwood. The last Lord Devonshire was a quiet and timid younger brother who married for convenience, the one chosen for him by his elder sister, the Queen. The following year, immediately after Killian's birth, he left the palace saying that he had fulfilled his duty, and 10 years later, he burned alive, along with his mistress, as a result of a mysterious fire. The Duke thought it was too suspicious for an accident, and there were hardly any investigations, and Benedict himself wrote the wedding contract for Devonshire, and was at the center of it all. The contract contained a clause stating that if the lady requested a divorce because of the gentleman, she would receive alimony, but if the gentleman died in an accident, the lady would receive a pension instead of alimony. Killian thought about the rumors that the Queen had orchestrated the whole thing to avoid paying the enormous debt, and immediately after his mother received compensation, she returned to her own country, and the Queen gifted him the abandoned child with numerous lands and islands. The gentleman thought that she must have wanted to free herself from the feeling of guilt for making her nephew an orphan, and at the same time make sure that he was under her control. The Duke believes that she alone did not suspect that the helpless child would grow up and bring a gun to her head. The Baron says that according to the information they received from Lady Chloe, the woman chosen by the Queen is open to negotiations, and she wants to start her own business and step out of the shadow of her own father. Sussex says that if he helps her, she will benefit from this wedding, and after the wedding, they can give Miss Falona any status she wants. The Duke asks if the man said anything. He replies that they questioned him, and he said that Miss Falone had affairs with William Zenana. After a short silence, the gentleman says that he is a little late, and then says that he is simply the head of the publishing house to whom Miss Filone showed her manuscripts, and asks if Gertrude told him about it. The Baron claims that this is not true, because they have a witness, and then a maid comes in and says that her name is Melissa. The Duke asks if she watched her mistress's every move. She claims she did, and he asks if she has anything to report to him about Miss Philo. The maid shrank and reported that Miss had an affair with Mr. William, and she told her that they were in love in childhood, and she ran into him again. Melissa says that the lady thinks that after the wedding, he will leave her, and therefore wants to get as much money out of him as possible before leaving with William. The maid reports that the mistress assured her that she dressed up as a man. To avoid suspicion, this is somewhat possible. The Duke thought about how he had never allowed traitors to go so far, and his nanny who had sold all the information about him to the Queen when he was 14, his friend who was involved in an attempt to kill him while he was studying abroad, and the teacher who only pretended to be his mentor, while all he wanted was to use the Devonshire house for his career, and they all disappeared without a trace, and there were no exceptions. Killian came to the lady and saw that she was sleeping. He stood next to the bed, and at that time the girl opened her eyes and asked his lordship how long he had been standing, and then wondered if this was a dream. The man, surprised, asks what she's talking about. The woman explains that he's never watched her sleep before and thinks it's a dream, and she wants to benefit from it. The Duke asks what she means by that. The girl asks if he will stroke her head until she falls asleep. The gentleman sat down next to her and then hugged her. Rovana said she was so happy she didn't want to sleep, and within minutes she fell asleep. When the lady woke up in the morning, she realized she wasn't entirely sure, but she'd had a dream the night before. Then, she remembered that 5 days had passed since her visit to the restaurant, and the publishing house that wanted to publish her book had closed, and the manager said he didn't even know a man named William Zanon. The main character thought that she knew that she would be deceived, and considered that this was a ball of tangled threads and not life, and she became interested in how she could fix all this now. The girl heard someone enter the room and then said that she was glad that Melissa was there and asked if she would help her put her hair up. The Duke touches her hair and suggests that she leave it that way because he thinks it suits her better. At this time, the main character thought that his touch was so alien but also familiar at the same time, and then asks if it was not a dream. Killian asks if she wants it to be like this, and then tells her that he crossed the line last night and kisses her head. At this time, the girl thought that now was the time to tell the truth, but she felt stupid and ashamed, but she believed that she would tell him everything. Rowana turns to his lordship and says something about what he asked her about. The man interrupts her, saying he's thought about it a lot and realized it was foolish to keep her as just a mistress for so long. The Duke places a ring on the lady's finger and suggests that from now on, she call him Killian. He explains that he should have given her this gift earlier. The girl, surprised, asks if he's sure he wants to give it to her. The man asks if she thinks he's confused her with someone else. Rowana hugged the guy enthusiastically. He says that, ever since the day she greeted him, a question has been stuck in his head, and he denied it, and was rude to her, but he didn't exactly reject her, but nothing could change his feelings. The Duke explains that all these 5 days, he has been thinking about how dear she is to him. The main character says it all seems like a dream to her, and she's very happy. She then suggests going to her favorite island and spending the summer there together and asks if he'll come with her. Killian replies that he needs to finish some business here, and he will come later, then explains that it will not take much time and offers to wait for him at Rowena's rest home, and then kisses the girl. While walking along the seashore, a boy approaches the lady and calls her madams. Rowana reminds that she asked him not to call her that, but to just call her Rowena. Tommy says it would be rude of him to call a high-status woman by her first name. Tommy is the son of the island's governor. The main character pats the boy on the head and says she's told him many times she has no high status, then asks if the governor sent him. Tom says that he saw the lady himself. This island is located far from the capital and was once quite deserted, but after Killian developed his business, there the dying economy was revived. In gratitude, the islanders are very kind to her too. Ravana asks the boy why he doesn't take a walk with her, since she's decided to go for a walk because the weather is so wonderful. Tom agreed, and they walked together. At that time, the boy thought that the lady was the most beautiful person in this world, and that she was very kind even to a child like him. But he noticed that sometimes concern appeared in her eyes. Tom reports that his father said that she is a special person for the Duke, and that she will become someone that cannot even be looked at. Hearing this, the main character thought that this was not what he promised her, and she had been waiting for Killian on this island for 15 days and could not wait. The girl does not understand what he has decided, but the boy interrupts her thoughts and asks if she will soon marry the Duke. Ravana asks in surprise if they'll get married. The boy insists he knows everything and that the reason his father is so busy these days is wedding preparations. Tom says that he heard that the Duke is coming today and then apologizes because it was a surprise and he let it slip. Hearing this, the lady thanked the boy for telling her this and then said that they would see each other later and quickly left. The main character thought that it turns out she has no reason to worry, and she will meet him at the port and cannot wait to meet him. Rowena met Melissa, and the maid asked Miss Rowena in surprise what she was doing there. The lady reports that she heard the Duke was coming, and then saw Killian with another woman whose hand he was holding. The main character looked at the gentleman and became curious about who was next to him because she was shocked, but she understood that she shouldn't jump to conclusions. Rowena looked at the stranger and thought that she was probably a distant relative who was invited to the wedding. Killian says he's glad to see Miss Falone, and then says it's his fiancée and Miss Chloe Aberdeen. The lady says that she is glad to meet you, and at this time the main character feels nauseous and apologizes, and then says that she probably didn't hear. The girl remembered the conversation between the maids about how the Duke was still in love with his bride, who died 3 years ago. The main character, hearing this, could barely stand on her feet, and it was obvious she was unsteady. The gentleman turned to Miss Falona, but Chloe stopped him, saying it was obvious she was shocked. The Duke orders the maids to take Miss Falona inside, as he feels she is not feeling well. Killian tells the assistant that they are tired from the long journey, and then asks if Miss Aberdeen's room is ready. He replies that all the apartments are ready. The Duke turns to the lady and asks her to forgive the bad manners of his mistress, since he believes that she is not educated at all. Chloe says it's hardly a matter of upbringing, and that as a woman she understands her pain. The bride looked at the man and thought about how this man she would marry, under a business agreement for mutual benefit. And she thought the same thing when they exchanged letters through their acquaintances. Chloe thought that when she met him in person, her heart changed, and she was worried that her mistress would become a big threat as people described her. The lady thought that he didn't waste a minute to get rid of his mistress, and considered it pleasant, since she would get both her father's business and this man. Chloe says she'd like to explore the island before heading to the house, and then asks if he'll show her. At this time, the main character came to her room and threw all her things around. And when Killian came in, she screamed and told him not to come near. The Duke tells her that the scene she made earlier was too provocative, and then reminds her that he gave her clothes, food, and a roof over her head. The girl screams and says that she doesn't need any of this, and then pushes him away from her and says that she is leaving. The young gentleman asks in surprise where she wants to go, and then grabs her hand. Rowena offers to let her go, but in response, he only smiled and thought that she was his pathetic but beautiful lover. Killian announces that his wedding is in 2 weeks, and the girl quietly says that he is the devil and a monster because she considers him a cruel and heartless scoundrel. Rowena asks why he gave her this ring, and why he acted as if he was going to marry her if he wanted to leave her completely alone. The gentleman says that he never promised her anything, and he simply gave her a gift as always. The main character was surprised to hear this, and he asked why she was so surprised. The lady replied that he knew how she felt, then asserted that she had always been honest with him because she loved him. Hearing this, the Duke pushed the girl onto the bed and reminded her that she said she loved him, and then offered to prove it. After a few minutes of strong hugs and passionate kisses, he tells the girl to take this as a sign of goodwill and to let her know if she needs more, and then he leaves her money on the bed. Hearing this, the main character laughed and he asked what was funny. Rowena asks if he ever loved her, but the man only remains silent in response, then replies that he never did and explains that he was having fun. A woman knocks on the door and calls Rebecca. The lady opens the door and apologizes, then explains that her son is sleeping. Rose insists that it's not her problem, then reminds her that she's behind on rent and asks screaming when she's going to pay, and also asks if she wants to stay outside in this cold with her child. The lady explains that she is very sorry because she was not paid on time at work, and then says that she was going to give her everything today and asks them to wait, and then gives them a bag. The woman says that if next time she is even 1 day late with payment, she will throw her out. The boy asks his mother what happened. She replies that everything is fine, and then explains that the owner came in to tell her something. Rebecca touched the boy and apologized for the noise waking him up. He claimed he was just cold. The lady says that he has a fever again, and therefore thinks that they need to go to Dr. McWood. The main character thought that on that terrible night, her thoughts of death were dispelled by a premonition that had overcome her, and if she thought about it, she had not had her period anymore. Rowena believed that fate had made its move, and her premonition was correct. She was pregnant. Fearing that the Duke would take the child if he discovered he was the father, she changed her name and moved to a city where she had no one. The girl was given an old closet, but it was enough to lie low. While pregnant, she took on any job she'd never done before. When all the newspapers were writing that Killian Devonshire and Chloe Aberdeen were moving to another country, she gave birth. A child who looked so much like that sweet but hateful man. The doctor says that he must be taking his medication regularly, and the illness will soon pass, and he is happy to report that his health is improving. The main character thanked the doctor, because Damian was often sick. The birth was attended by a midwife from the slums, who was called in at the very last minute, and from the moment the umbilical cord was cut, he has suffered from many illnesses. A boy tells his mother that he was praised for taking his medicine, and then asks if she will buy him a toy for it. Ravana says that she will buy it for him as a holiday gift, and it will be very soon. The main character understood that she had little money and thought that she would simply work more in the evenings and find a part-time job. The lady thought that she couldn't stop blaming herself because he wouldn't have had to go through all this if he had been born in good conditions. The doctor gave the boy some candy, and Damian asks his mother if it's okay if he takes it. Rowana tells the doctor that he doesn't need to do this, and that the fact that he's examining him already means a lot to them. The man says that his nephew is about the same age as Damian and asks to accept it. The woman thanked the doctor and told her son to thank him too. When the lady and her son left, the doctor reflected on what he'd heard. Rebecca's husband had died in an accident 5 years ago. A local woman had seen her very sadly and said she'd been tossing and turning while pregnant before settling there. Macwood thought that he was very worried about her and about Damian. Suddenly, the doctor's assistant opens the door and says that a man has come to see him, and she thinks that he should go out because the man says that he is looking for someone. A gentleman comes into the room and asks if he is Dr. Philip McWood. Together with the gentleman, 2 men entered who grabbed the doctor, and their boss sat down and said that he would ask the doctor only once if he knew a blonde with green eyes and almost 30 years old. The man says that her name is Rowena Falone, but most likely she is now using a different name, and also asks if a woman fitting this description has come to him. At this time, the doctor thought that it might be Rebecca, and then said no. The man says that if he meets such and such, he should call this hotel and ask him to answer the phone since he will pay him a good sum. The gentleman says that his name is Xenon Glitters, and they know his name. When Damian saw Aunt Harriet, he was delighted, and then hugged her. The woman asked if the boy slept well last night, and he replied that he did. Harriet asked if he listened well to his mother. Ravana apologizes for leaving her son with her again. The woman assures him that everything is fine because her children enjoy playing with him. Harriet, the manager of a textile factory, has been her supporter for 5 years. She tells the kids to go outside. The manager was the one who called the midwife and helped with the work at the factory, and the main character is very grateful to her. Harriet tells Rebecca that she came here when she was pregnant with twins and believes that they are colleagues who gave birth at about the same time, and therefore she does not need to apologize. The woman says that if she needs help with anything, then just let her say so, and she will be happy to help because she appreciates it, and then asks if she shouldn't go since she works the evening shift like yesterday. Rebecca says that she will pick up Damian tomorrow morning and thanks the woman. Harriet says that she repeats again not to thank her every time, and then asks what she thinks about Dr. McWood since she believes that he is clearly interested in her, and asks if the girl noticed this. Rebecca says she's mistaken because he's young and single, and she's a single mother. The woman says there's a year difference between them, then reveals she has a son, and asks if she thinks he needs a father to support him. Harriet claims that the lady needs a man like Dr. Macwood. Rebecca says that it's time for her to go, and the woman says that she heard her. And at that time, the girl saw that the newspaper had fallen on the floor and says that she will pick it up. Suddenly, the main character saw a photograph of the Duke, and the newspaper wrote that the Duke of Devonshire from Rockford had returned after separating from his wife. According to sources close to him, the reason for the divorce was Chloe Aberdeen's infertility. The woman saw the girl and asked what was written there, as her face had darkened considerably. She replied that there was nothing there, and then said that she needed to go because she would be late. Harriet suggests that she not overdo it. As Rowana ran to work, she thought nothing would happen because it didn't concern her. She recalled Killian's words about him just having fun and considered him no longer in her life. The main character thought that if they ran away, she would need something that she could sell and get money. Ravana looked at the ring and remembered that she did not take the money and left everything she had, but kept it in case something terrible happened, and she could give it away and run away to another place. Someone knocking on her door, and it sounded like the voice of her friend Anna. The girl said she came in to ask if they could go together, since they work the same shift. And when she looked at her room, she asked if she'd been robbed. The main character replies that she was just looking for something, and then says that she is already leaving. Ravana thought that 5 years had already passed, and perhaps he lived in another country, but if he wanted to find her, he would have already done so. The main character understands that he will not appear at her door after so many years, simply because he is divorced, and therefore believes that there is no point in being afraid. Anna saw the ring and couldn't understand how such a poor woman could have such an expensive ring. Hearing this, the girl became frightened. Anna accidentally knocked over a glass, which fell to the floor and broke. Lady says she'll go get a broom because she thinks her partner might get hurt, so she suggests she stay put. The girl explains to Rebecca that she didn't mean to, and then reaches for the ring to steal it. The main character asks the girl if she is hurt, and Anna replies that she wants to make amends with her and can help her clean up, while at the same time she hid the ring in her pocket. A little while later, the shock of the news from the newspaper passed, and soon everything was back to normal. Only Rowana worked more and was able to buy Damian a present for Christmas. As expected, Damian often spent the night at Harriet's. Late at night, the main character came to the manager and asked if her son had behaved well. The woman picked up the sleeping boy and said he was a very well-behaved boy. Rowena thanked the woman because she does a lot for her, but she hardly gives anything in return. Harriet tells her not to say that, and then asks her to be careful. When the girl left, the woman became curious about Damian's father, and was sure he was very handsome if his son resembled his father. She also believed that if he hadn't had to work so hard, and if he had been with Rebecca, Damian wouldn't be so lonely. Suddenly, the woman heard someone knocking on her door, and she wondered who it could be at such a late hour. And when she opened the door, she saw the doctor and asked what brought him here so late. Philip apologizes and then asks if Rebecca was there. The woman replies that the lady just left. Hearing this, the doctor says that he should have come earlier, and the woman asks in surprise, "What's wrong?" The man reports that some time ago, a man came to his clinic, and as it turned out, he was looking for Rebecca, but he was afraid that he would be followed and could not report it right away. The doctor says that the man said that her real name is Rowena Falone. Harriet asks if he thinks this man is Damian's father. He replies that it's impossible because he doesn't look like a boy at all, and his name is Zenos Glitters. The woman asks Glitters if he's the one running the legitimate gambling house. The man replies that at first glance he is, and he's heard he's expanded his business. The doctor says that through underground activities, such as unlicensed lending and the sale of illegal alcohol, he believes that people like them should not get involved with him. Harriet asks why such a man would be looking for Rebecca. He replies that he doesn't know, but asks her to tell her to be careful and that he'll be coming to their house to examine Damian. When the doctor left, the woman thought that she was confused. And if he was not Damian's father, then could he be a debt collector who was trying to track down Rebecca? The woman thought she needed a gun and then opened the door. The lady reported that she was missing and apparently asked for next month's payment in advance and vanished without a trace. Then she asked if she knew where the girl might have gone. Rebecca replies that she doesn't know because they weren't that close. Harriet reports that she heard that she lived with a man, but she left with him, and the police have already lived, but thinks they will quickly be forgotten. Rebecca says she hopes she's doing well, but the woman says she's been chatting away too long and almost forgot that the doctor asked her to give her the candy. The main character, sitting next to her son's bed, holding candies in her hands, thought that they were for Damian, and remembered that she told him there was no need for this, but the doctor was a very good person and always remembered them. Suddenly, the girl saw a note which said that it was Philip McWood, and he knew that this note took her by surprise. The doctor says that he will be brief, and that she is being monitored, and he asks her to be careful. At this time, the gentleman came to the woman, and she surprised asks if he is Glitters, and then says that Rebecca has a debt, and he probably came to catch her. The gentleman says that he must say everything much differently, and says that he wants to make her a good offer. At this time, the main character ran to Harriet, and when the woman opened the door, she asked in surprise what she was doing, and also wondered if she had run here from her house. The girl assures that everything is fine, and then asks if someone came to her and threatened her, or asked where she lives. The woman says she doesn't understand what the lady is talking about, and then says nothing happened. She asks what's wrong and what's wrong with her. Rebecca explains that everything is fine, and she just needed to make sure. Harriet asks if her house has become too small for the two of them, and thinks it's old and unsafe, full of alcoholics and gamblers. Then she tells her that she knows someone who rents out a place nearby for a very good price. The manager says that this price should be about the same as what she pays now, and if she wants, she can put in a good word for her. At this time, the main character reflects on the fact that the place where Harry lives is much safer than theirs, and if the rent is about the same as what she pays now, then she cannot ask for better conditions. The girl says that she appreciates it, and then thanks and refuses, because she thinks that they will soon have to move to another city. Rebecca says that if a stranger asks her questions, she asks her to say that she doesn't know anything, and then leaves. At this point, the woman asks the gentleman if he's sure Ravana will be safe. He replies, "Of course," and offers to name any amount he wishes, considering it payment for looking after his woman. Glitter says that she doesn't need this money, and she will do it only because he is the one Rowena needs, and then explains that all she wants is to make her happy. Hearing this, the Duke was surprised, and then said that it did not concern her, and left wishing her good night. At that moment, the woman realized that Killian Devonshire Rockford, a man she only knew from the newspapers, was Damian's biological father. She couldn't understand how she hadn't realized it before, since the boy was a carbon copy of him. Glitter understands that Rowena doesn't want anything to do with him, but a frequently ill child like Damian needs to live in better conditions than where he is now. The woman understands that she can tell from just one look that he is in love with her, but she is interested in whether he himself realizes it or not. The assistant asks his lordship what they should do, and also inquires whether they should find Miss Falone. Duke Og replies that there is no need for that, and then asks if they found the one who sold the ring on the black market. Janoc reports that it was a woman, and it seems she stole it, and they are following her, and then asks if the gentleman is sure that he does not need to meet with Miss Falone now. At this time, the Duke thought about Harriet, and he was grateful to her that she became friends with Rowena when she had nowhere to go. But that's all, and she said not to make Rowena unhappy. Killian finds it funny, considering that, up until this moment, the woman didn't even know Rowena's real name, and then he asks, "What's wrong with Chloe Aberdeen?" The assistant says that she disappeared after signing the divorce agreement, and according to their agent, she went to the village to recover. The Duke says it's for her own good. Chloe says that since they were married, it would be nice to be faithful spouses. She thought she was just laughing about it, but that was just the beginning. And despite her ability, Chloe said she'd be easy to work with. Aberdeen turned out to be quite stubborn. Killian realized that she had a new goal to seduce him, and she slipped into his bedroom every time she had the opportunity. The gentleman recalled that there was a time when he thought that she was forcing herself to do this because of an heir that he did not need, but he felt disgusted as if he had been cursed. The man understood that it wasn't about Chloe, and he reacted this way to any woman who tried to seduce him. When her attempts to get his attention failed, she made no secret of her love affairs. But when Chloe realized that her last desperate attempt to provoke him had not worked, the lady reminded the Duke that she was his wife and asked how he could insult her. So when on their last day together, she was found in a bathtub full of cold water with a cut wrist. Luckily, she didn't lose too much of the red fluid, and her wounds weren't life-threatening. On the day his wife opened her eyes, he gave her 2 documents and offered her a choice: a pass to a psychiatric hospital or a divorce petition. The Duke said it was okay if she didn't want a divorce, but he couldn't just leave her when she had clearly lost her mind. Killian said that if she couldn't make a decision, now he would give her time to think, and she should let him know through a lawyer. Chloe asks if he was so cruel out of spite. Hearing this, the Duke thought that he had never remembered this name in the last 5 years, and then asked what kind of nonsense this was. And the woman screaming tells him not to try to deny it, because sometimes he calls her in his sleep and then asks if he hid her somewhere. Chloe insists that the Duke of Devonshire remains pure for the sake of his all-powerful mistress. He asks if she's just paranoid or if she's truly lost her mind, then leaves, closing the door behind him. Killian thought that these ridiculous accusations did not even deserve an answer, and he himself did not understand how he fell. The Duke thought that it was a curse that was tightening around his neck and swallowing up his whole life. The young gentleman recalls his first meeting with Falone and believes that ever since that damned name surfaced, he has suffered from endless bouts of dizziness and headaches. The man realized that the memories came flooding back like a wave breaking through a dam. Ravana, while at the station, thought that she was really going to the capital and believed that everything would be fine with her and she would not be left alone there. The girl realized that this was a third-class compartment, and when she went inside, she saw the gentleman and said that she apologized because she thought she must have mixed up the compartment. At this point, the main character tripped over the Duke, who finally stood up and caught her. He told her that he and Miss should be careful and asked if she was lost. Rowena explains that she is looking for a third-class compartment, and at that moment, I thought that she was just a little shocked by how cute he was. The Duke rang the bell, and a man came in and asked how he could help him. The gentleman offered to escort the lady to her compartment. The worker invited the woman to follow him. The girl looked back and said she was Ravenna Filone. Standing on the platform, the Duke says that he is Killian Devonshire. In a restaurant, the main character says that someday she would like to sit in a restaurant on the coast and enjoy a great dinner on the table with her loved one in front of her. The Duke says it's a wonderful dream and then asks what her favorite flowers are. She replies Edelweiss and that her home country is full of them. The girl says that it is a very calm and beautiful place, but she has never described it until now, and this is her first time going to the city, so she is very excited and nervous. The gentleman says that she should adapt well to city life, and then asks how old she is. The lady replies that she's 20 and asks how he is. He tells her he's 28, and the girl is surprised to hear this saying. She never would have thought he looked any younger. Rowena asks the Duke what his favorite fruits are, and says that she likes raspberries. Killian says he has to go, and it was nice talking to her Miss Philo, and then leaves. The Duke thought that Rowena Filone was a very attractive girl, but she was too young for him, and he believed that there were too many reasons why she was not right for him. The man thinks that she is a 20-year-old child, and that it is obvious that the girl is not even from a middle-class family, and thinks that this should be their first and last meeting. Killian thought that even in the carriage on the way home, after he got off the train, and after he arrived at the townhouse, he couldn't get her out of his head, and the remnants of conscience that were still there didn't last long. The young master told his housekeeper that she was a girl with blonde hair and green eyes who had recently gone to the capital, and that she should find her for him. The gentleman recalled that when he received the answer, he was shocked because the woman told him that she was a high-class courtesan who used her blonde hair as a weapon and was now on the run because she had gotten into huge debt. The housekeeper asks if she should ask someone to transfer her here. The main character says that this is a very calm and beautiful place, but she has never left it before, and this is her first time going to the city, so she is very excited and nervous. Hearing this, the Duke thought that she had an impressive performance, and he did not understand why he could not get her out of his head. Killian tells the maid that this is not necessary and she can go. Gertrude turns to his lordship and informs him that this woman looks like the late Lady Angela, and since she now seems to be feeling better, she could be of use to him, as she believes that the Queen will undoubtedly try to arrange a marriage again. At this point, the gentleman considered killing her because she had deceived him again. However, he believed that if he could use her to avoid trouble, he didn't want to participate. The man thought about how one day he might see her in his bed and lose all interest in her. Then he said it was a good idea, but he thought she should suffer a little more first. The assistant asks his lordship why he does not see Miss Filone again. Jenoch reports that after a long investigation, they found a lead and reports that she settled in a secluded town with a couple of factories. They tracked down a suspicious doctor, and his name is Philip McWood. The doctor led them to the home of a woman who works in a textile factory. She rented a dilapidated villa and had been living there for some time, and they also found the ring at a nearby black market. Hearing this, the Duke thought that even if she had been unfaithful, she would still have remained his mistress, and if she had taken the money he gave her, she would not have had to work for the next 10 years. At this time, the gentleman thought that the splitting main pain arose sharply and pulsatingly that pierced his heart. The assistant informs his lordship that they have arrived at the hotel, and at this time, the Duke thought that he was lost in useless thoughts. The servant informs the master that he found the woman who pawned the ring, and she was found dead. Callian quickly mounted his horse and rode away. He thought it was one of two things. Either the Queen had something, or there was an enemy within, and whatever it was, Rowena was in danger. At this point, the boy asks his mother where she was. She explains that she simply needed to talk to Harriet about something. Rowena asks her son to listen, and then explains that they might soon have to move somewhere far away. Hearing this, the boy is surprised and asks if this means he won't see Aunt Harriet and her sons again. Suddenly, the main character heard a knock on the door and tells Damian to go to his room since she thinks that it must be the owner and asks him to come inside. Rowena looked out the window and thought that this couldn't be, and even if he divorced his wife, because she couldn't conceive all he had to do was find another woman and get married. The girl believes that he has no reason to look for her because he doesn't love her. At that moment, the door opened, and a gentleman entered the room. The lady said that this couldn't be happening. Killian says that he understands that for her, he is like a demon or a reaper of death, and then claims that she has lived a miserable life. The girl asks him in surprise why he's here. He suggests they start over. The main character says that the last time they separated, he threw money at her and asks if he forgot about throwing it. The man says he threw her out and that it's his job to return her, and then he burns a cigarette. She screams and tells him not to smoke. At this time, the boy opens the door and says that it doesn't look like the owner, and then asks who is there. The gentleman was surprised to hear the child's voice, and the lady invited him back into the room. The boy closed the door. Rowena screams and says that he was getting out of his house, and at that time, she thought that he saw Damian's face and thinks that he realized that the child looks like him. Killian smiled and said that he didn't expect much honesty from her, but he never thought that she now had baggage. The Duke says that she must have met another man during their breakup, and the girl asks him not to come closer. The man grabbed her face and called her name, then asked when she became so impudent. The main character explains that he is intruding and cannot expect kindness from her. Killian asks if it's because of that man, then leans in and kisses her on the lips. However, she pushes him away and he smiles. The gentleman says that it is her choice, and then claims that she will become his lover again, and also asks whether she would prefer to languish on the street with her child. Ravana asks him why he's doing this after all these years and nudges him. She reminds him that he once abandoned her and asks what else he wants from her. The Duke wonders why she is asking him about this, and says that he himself would like to know why. Killian says that he was going to leave after he paid a woman named Harriet because he didn't need to waste time on Rowena, because he was just annoyed that his ex-wife was living in poverty. The gentleman says the woman betrayed him and had an affair and is now the mother of another man's child. He doesn't understand why he still doesn't want to let her go. The Duke says he doesn't need a reason and is doing it because he wants to. He says he'll give her time to pack and will come pick her up tomorrow at noon. And when he returns, it would be best for the child to be there too. After this conversation, the girl fell to the floor, and the child asks his mother if she is okay and wonders who this person is. The girl explains that this is her old friend, and then asks if he remembers how she told him about moving, and says that he wants to help them. The woman says that they will live together with him because he is very rich, and Damian will be able to get all the sweets and toys he wanted. Hearing this, the child screams and objects, saying that he wants to be only with her, and then asks if this man made her cry. The main character understands that there was a time when Killian Devonshire was everything to her, and when he loved, and her love for him in return, meant the whole world to her. However, the girl understands that the one who stopped her life from ending was the child growing inside her, not Killian. After all, the Duke killed her, but Damian brought her back to life. Rowena tells him that even if they live with someone, all she has is her son, and he is the only person she loves more than life, and then hugs him. The next day, the women ask the main character why she's leaving so suddenly. She replies that she doesn't know what to say and apologizes because she can't stay until they find a replacement, especially since she's still in shock over Anna's disappearance. The woman gave the girl flowers and said that they prepared them for her because she had worked hard until today. Harriet says she's sad to be leaving suddenly, but thanks Rebecca for deciding to do what no one else wanted to do all this time. The girl says that they treated her well all this time and asks how they knew that she was leaving. The manager says that she said it and then says that they need to talk and grabs her hand. The surprised lady asks the manager what it is. The woman explains that she told him where she lives. Rowena asks in surprise what she means. Harriet says the Duke is the biological father and asks if that's true. The woman says that she is sorry that she could not do what she asked her to do, and then says that she has every right not to forgive her, but she believes that her son needs a better environment, and she can say that the Duke loves her. Hearing these words, the main character shuddered and thought that she was sure that Harriet thought that she was doing the right thing because she did not know what he did to her. The girl knows that Harriet cares for Damian as if he were her own son, and she cannot be offended by him, but she believes that he does not love her. Rebecca tells her not to apologize because she has no other feelings for her. Besides gratitude, she says she has one last request. Then she asks if she can send this letter and explains that the address belongs to a man named Jeremy Dish. Harriet says Jeremy Dish is a famous author. The girl explains that he's her maternal uncle and the man who raised her, and asks him to let him know how much she misses them. Ravana says that if everything is okay, she asks her to write the address on the envelope herself. The woman says she prays that her life will be filled with nothing but happiness from now on. The main character thought that they wouldn't let her go like before, and that she needed to protect Damian. However, she realized that if the Duke found out he was the father, he wouldn't leave her alone. The girl believes that her son will remain in a vast abandoned castle where no one will be near him, and she understands that she needs to escape before this happens, no matter what exactly. The man reports that the woman was poisoned, and judging by the blood on her upper lip, he believes that it appears she struggled before being forced to lower her throat. The gentleman says that based on all the available evidence, the culprit was most likely someone she did not know, and then he says that right now the only suspect is the man with whom she lived before her death, because their neighbors said they saw them running away together. The Duke reports that this man will also soon be found dead, and suggests telling the magistrate that an unknown man left the woman's body in front of the medical examiner's office. Killian wondered who was targeting Rowena and was acting very cunningly. He believed they must have killed Anna to send a warning, but he knew that wasn't what the Queen wanted. The Duke believes that, in this case, there is only one suspect he can think of. The assistant informs his lordship that Mr. Zenock has gone to fetch Miss Falone, and that they will soon arrive at the train station. He has reserved a separate cabin for the child. The gentleman says that's good and suggests keeping it out of his sight. He thought about how his head had started throbbing again. Mr. Zenock turns to the girl and says that it was a long time ago, and then informs her that the carriage has arrived and asks her to go with him since his grace is waiting for her. Ravana asks if she can go to the house first and pick up the luggage. The man tells her he wants her to leave everything behind, except these clothes. At this point, the main character thinks that, of course he knows, since he always does things his own way. Xenoc says that anyone can tell about her son that he is the Duke's child, and he was shocked when he saw him. The main character asks where Damian is now, and asks to tell her that nothing happened to him. The man reports that he has thought and believes that it would be better for his grace to judge for himself, and he has not said anything yet. Xenoc claims that the young gentleman is safe, and he has prepared all the conditions for his stay. The girl says she wants to see everything with her own eyes. He reassures her and promises that her son will be okay. Rowana asks how she can trust him, and at that moment, she thinks about him being an illegitimate child. After all, he's a boy who could opt the Devonshire family tree, and she understands that Zenock will never accept Damian kindly. The man tells Miss Falone that she can trust him, and then informs her that the young gentleman is the Duke's son, so that makes him someone he must also serve. Zenock offers the woman to take it, because it will cover her travel expenses, and he will not tell the Duke about it. 5 years ago, when everyone looked down on her, because she was a mistress, he was the only person who treated her like a human being. The main character agrees, and then says that she has a request, and she asks not to tell the Duke that Damian is his son. The man asks why, because he thinks that if he keeps it a secret, nothing good will come of it. The lady says that she will tell him about it herself when she is ready, and asks him to promise her. At this time, Xenoc remembered that 5 years ago, he had imagined her as nothing more than a beautiful doll existing to satisfy the Duke's desires, and she had always had such a look. The man says that he cannot give her much time, because he believes that the truth will come out sooner or later, and then says that he will allow her to see her son for a while. The gentleman says that he will make sure that the employees keep quiet about this. Rowana asks Damian if everything is okay. The boy happily asks his mother to look, since they said all these toys and clothes are for him. Then he asks if his mother thinks they suit him. The lady says that it suits him very well, and at that time, she thought that this child must have been deprived of many things that he desired. The girl thought that she could not imagine how hard it was for him to give up his desires. Damian asks his mother if it's right for him to accept all of this. She says he's doing everything right and then kisses him. Xenoc turned to Miss Falone, and she said she had to leave now. The child asked where she was going and also wondered if she was seeing the right person. Rowana explains that she will be in another cabin, and they will see him when they get off the train, and asks him not to worry. Hearing this, the boy objects and says that he does not want her to go to him because she scares him and feels that he wants to take his mother away. At this time, the main character thought that she should remain strong and remain in Killian's favor. The lady turns to Mr. Zenock, and the man says that the nanny will keep an eye on him. The nanny approached the boy and asked him to calm down, and then said that she would prepare him a delicious snack. Damian screams and says that he doesn't need these toys and clothes, and that he wants to go with his mother. Rowana approaches the mister and tells him that she hopes he will take care of her son. At this time, the main character thought that she felt as if she was on the way to execution. Xinoc informs his lordship that Miss Falone is here. When the lady entered, she quietly sat down in her corner. The Duke asked if this was her way of protesting. She demurred, explaining that she simply didn't want to disturb him by sitting too close. Killian says that she overestimates herself because she does not have such an influence on him, but he believes that there is one thing for which he should praise her. The Duke says that she didn't take that boy with her, and he wasn't sure that she could do it. The girl asks why he was looking for her if she has no influence over him. She also wonders why he broke into her house just to bring her and her son back to Rockford, even though they lived in peace. Hearing this, the man slammed his hand on the wall and then reminded her that he told her that he was simply returning his trash. And at this time, the main character thought that she should not be afraid of him, but should protect Damian. The girl pushes the guy away and asks if he will be kind enough to leave her dream, and also wonders how long he will hold her son hostage and when he will stop controlling her life. At this time, the man kisses the lady and then smiles and tells her to stop being so provocative and suggests that she keep her mouth closed. The main character wipes her lips with her hand and says that if he is not going to answer her now, she will go to bed. Hearing this, the gentleman was surprised, and Ravana said that she had so many thoughts that she could not sleep last night and was tired. The Duke smiled and then said that he should do as he pleased. The main character made her bed and remembered that when she left, her uncle asked her to wait a second and asked if she really needed to leave. Uncle says that she doesn't even know what she will encounter in the capital, and he says that an innocent, naive girl like her can easily be used for their own purposes. The girl thanked Jeremy for his concern and then said that she has a friend who lives in the capital and therefore asks him not to worry. Ravana says that she is no longer a child and wants to experience new things and achieve her dreams on her own. Uncle says that if she wants this, then let her accept his blessing, since he cannot force her to stay. But she must promise him one thing. Jeremy says that if she has problems or needs help, then she should not be afraid to return to him, and it does not matter when and what she did, because he will always be on her side. The main character remembered that when she was in a difficult situation, she did not understand why she did not ask him for help then. After all, when her friend betrayed the girl and left a debt in her name, and when Killian abandoned her and left, and when Damian was born, Ravana believes that there were many opportunities to contact him because she never doubted and knew that he was on her side. The girl thought she simply didn't want him to see that she had failed and couldn't take care of herself. However, she believes he was like a father to her, and her foolish pride was the cause of it all. When the lady woke up, she saw the Duke next to her, and he was whispering in her ear that she should stay put if she was not going to arouse him. The main character thought about how 5 years ago, when they had sex, he always left immediately afterwards saying he was busy. The lady doesn't understand why he's doing this now after so many years, but she thinks it doesn't matter because there's no point in thinking about it and just wants to go back to sleep and forget about everything for today. At the Devonshire estate, the butler meets them and informs them that they have prepared Miss Falone's old room. The Duke orders that she be given the room next to his hearing. This the butler objects and says that this room is for the Duchess, but it is currently unoccupied. Hearing this, the main character thought that if her room was next to his, it would be more difficult for her to see Damian. Ravana says she'd prefer her old room. Hearing this, the gentleman frowns and insists she use the room next to his. At this time, the postman brought the writer a letter and insisted that he should give it to him personally. Jeremy says it's a publishing company trying to speed up his work and offers to send him back. The boy insists that he cannot do this and then gives the letter. Zenos tells the lady that the Duke plans to leave the mansion in a few days at dawn because he has questions about taxes and property management. He believes it will be easier for her to see the young master at that time. Rowana asks if any of the workers have seen Damian. The man replies that a few have seen him, including himself and the nanny, but they've all sworn to secrecy and therefore advises her not to worry. Xenos shows the lady her son's room. When the girl entered, she saw the boy fast asleep. The man reports that the Duke has no children from a previous marriage and believes that if he acknowledges the young Master Damian as his biological son, he will likely be named heir. The girl asks what will happen after this, and she wonders if he will grow up as a duke in this isolated castle. Xenos claims that every child has the right to know who his real father is, and the Duke should know about his son's existence, because he believes that one way or another he deserves it, and suggests telling little by little about the young master. The man says that when his lordship stops avoiding Damian, she will be able to tell him the truth. Hearing this, the protagonist thinks that this won't happen because she plans to escape before it does. The next morning, the maid says her name is Joanna Jude, and she is her new personal maid. Rowana says it's nice to meet her and asks if she knows a girl named Melissa, and then says that she worked here last time she was there and that she has brown eyes and freckles. Joanna says that this maid left shortly after she came here, and she heard that she received a large allowance and returned to her hometown and thinks that she works on her parents' farm. The main character says that she understands and says that Melissa took care of her back then, and if she ever writes to her, let her send her greetings. The maid tells the mistress that she has something to tell her, and then opens the door and shows many boxes with gifts. Seeing this, the girl was stunned and asked what it was all about. Joanna said they were all gifts for her, and the whole capital knew she had returned. The maid reports that the shoes are from the Earl of Wales's house. The pearl necklace is from Baroness Somerset, and this coat is from a famous boutique. Hearing this, the protagonist thought about how 5 years ago these same nobles called her dirty and looked at her with disgust. And now they send her cards and gifts because they think she's in a better position than before. The girl thought that even if she didn't become a duchess, she would be an influential figure in the Devonshire household. However, she understood that if the Duke grew tired of her, he would throw her out again. Rowana tells them to send these gifts back and tells the maid not to touch anything. Joanna informs the lady that there is a letter for her that arrived without gifts from someone named Harriet Dickinson. The lady tells her to leave it here because she will read it separately. The woman writes that the twins miss Damian terribly, and she misses her too, and she is also worried about her. Harriet writes that she heard that the lady is looking for a tutor for Damian, and she is also worried about the education of the twins, since it is difficult to find a teacher who will teach both at once. A woman writes that she heard that one of her favorite writers lives in the area, and he is a friend of a friend, so she asked him, and he says that he is looking for a job because he does not earn enough from his works. Harriet asks what she thinks about hiring him as Damian's tutor. After reading this, the main character thought that this was another letter from her uncle, which only she knew. Rowana thought that in Killian's absence, she could see Damian much more often. And Damian's place in this house was rather ambiguous. The mistress's child, not biologically related to the Duke, was locked in his room and barely able to go anywhere else. Damian asks his mother if she's been to the lake in front of the castle. She replies that she's been several times, and he asks if he can visit just this once. Hearing this, the main character thought that her son knew that he did not have much freedom here, and that she felt sorry for this little child. Mom replies that they can only for a short time. When they went outside, the girl thought that everything must be fine, since it was only now that dawn had broken, and she had put a hat on the child. The lady saw the lake and thought that it had always been so beautiful, even when she was his lover, and he had come there several times, but it was a small, unattractive lake, and she had seen much cleaner lakes in the country. Rowana was amazed at how beautiful it could be when she looked at it with her child. The boy says he's very excited and likes. It's just the two of them. He says he wants to swim but isn't allowed to, and asks if that's true. Mom says that this is true, but soon he will be able to swim wherever he wants, and then says that her maternal uncle will soon move in with them, and his name is Jeremy Dish. Damian asks if this is true and if they'll be able to leave. Mom says she promises him that, and he'll be able to swim in bigger lakes with much greater freedom. The main character believes that when Killian returns, she should ask him if she can hire her uncle as a mentor for Damian. The girl thought that no one except her knew him as Roderick Dyfons, and therefore believes that everything should be fine. When the lady returned to her room, the gentleman asked where she had been at such a late hour. She replied that she had gone out for a walk because she felt a little out of breath. Killian asks why she didn't tell anyone. The girl says she's sorry and insists it won't happen again. Ravana says that they just got back from their trip, and the last thing they need right now is to worry about something like this. When he touched the girl, he thought that she had become very thin, and over the past 5 years, Killian felt as if there was an empty hole in his chest. Although later, the Duke realized that Ravana did not take the money he gave her, and he was not going to look for her to give it to her thinking about his affair. He was so upset that if he saw her again someday, he might not be able to resist strangling her to death. When Killian met the girl again, he did not feel anger at all, and the emotion he experienced was so complex that it could not be simply described as sympathy or tenderness. The gentleman wondered if she'd lived a good life, and whether he'd have felt nothing for her then. However, at that moment, there was no point in thinking about it because he needed her. Killian thought that he had left her behind forever, but this was far from the truth, and the only thing that worries him is Miss Falone. And then he says that he has decided to leave the past in the past. The lady, surprised, asks what he means. He explains that the girl can see the child and can go for a walk around the castle if she wants, but only with a guard at a certain time. Rowana asks if he's sure. The Duke wonders if she really thought he didn't know she'd visited her son while he was gone, then says that as long as he doesn't see him, everything's fine. Killian says that tomorrow he is going to set up a trust fund for her, and all she has to do is listen to the lawyer and sign the papers. The Duke says that from now on, if she needs anything, she should talk to him directly or through the maid. The main character asks why he is so generous, and then says that she does not need a trust fund because he already does enough for her. The man says he's doing this because he needs her. Then he reveals he didn't know she liked lakes, and that as soon as things calm down, they'll go boating. Ravana became curious about how much time had passed since he told her this last time, and she knows that he kept his promise because he took her for a ride on the boat. The girl realizes that he dined with her every day and did not force her to sleep with him in exchange for his generosity. The lady became interested in what he was thinking about because she would be happy to look at what was going on in his head. The Duke tells Miss that a gift awaits her at home. She is surprised to hear this, but then says that he has given her enough, and she would prefer if he allowed her to see Damian more often. Killian says he thinks he's given her enough freedom. She says he only allows her to see their son at designated times, then insists he's still young and needs his mother's care. The man asks if this means she wants to be with him all day, and then says that he has 2 nannies and a team of servants who serve him at any time of the day. Ravana claims she is his mother, and the only one who truly cares for him. She recalled how this little child helped her survive the most difficult moment of her life when she wanted to end it all. The lady remembered the first time he cried out, and the first time he took his first steps, even though he kept falling, and the first time he called her Mom and threw himself into her arms. Those were the moments that made her happiest when she never even hoped for it. The main character says that he is her everything and the only ray of hope that supports her in this life. Hearing this, the man hugged the girl and told her to calm down and not cry. When Rowana hugged the Duke, she realized that he was warm, and she should not let his warmth fool her, because she knows that he can switch in a second, depending on his mood. The girl knows he dragged her down to the very bottom when she was happiest, and this warmth is nothing more than a whim. But if he wants her to be fragile, and then tells her she'll behave, he thinks he'll use that to his advantage. The main character asks if he will allow her to see her child more often. Killian suggests returning to the castle as her gift is waiting for her. The lady thought that in recent days he has been constantly bringing her gifts, and these are dress decorations or flowers. Suddenly, Melissa opened the door, and the main character thought that she was the gift he was talking about. The maid informs her that she has been rehired, and that from now on, she and Joan will be taking care of her. The mistress embraces the girl and says she is so happy to see her, having heard that she has returned to her hometown. Rowana asks if she was forced to come back, and then says that she told Joan that she missed her. Hearing this, the maid remembered the man's words, that she needed to say one thing, that Miss Falone had an affair with a man named William Zinune. Melissa said she couldn't do it anymore. The butler asked if she wanted to leave now after everything she'd done, insisting she'd played the role of a faithful servant, perfectly following his instructions. However, the maid left and assured herself that Miss Rowana was fine since she was the Duke's favorite. Melissa ritually told herself this every time she felt guilty. And so it went until 5 years later, when she received a letter from Joan. The maid noticed how thin and exhausted she looked. It was hard to believe she'd been known as an incredible beauty 5 years ago, and had heard she was now pregnant. Melissa thought that it was all her fault, and if only she hadn't lied about it. The mistress turns to the maid and says that her face has turned blue, and then asks if she feels well. At this time, Melissa thought that the lady was still kind to her, but she thought that it didn't seem like she knew anything, and she didn't know what happened 5 years ago and why she was disposed of in such a cruel way. The maid thought that she had to confess and had to tell her everything and ask for forgiveness. Melissa tells the lady that she needs to tell her something, but at that moment, Baron Sansex enters the room and asks how he can help her. The gentleman says that he just spoke with a lawyer, and he needs to discuss the trust fund with her. And when he saw Melissa, he was surprised, and the maid was scared. Rowana asks the maid, "What's wrong, seeing that she's shaking all over?" Melissa apologizes and then says she's not feeling well. The main character says that the long journey must have exhausted her and suggests that she go and rest, since they will meet tomorrow morning. When Melissa left the room, she thought that she was a worthless person because she did not understand how she could expect forgiveness after everything she had done. The maid doesn't understand what to do now because she can't look her mistress in the eyes. Jenoch tells the maid to follow him because his lordship wants to see her. At this time, the Baron tells the lady that they will act as agreed, and if she has any questions, she should not hesitate to ask them. The lady says that he is a busy man, and there is no need to worry so much about her. The Baron says he is worried because the lady is a very important person for the Duke, but this is surprising because she returned after being exiled, and now the Duke wants to create a trust fund for her. Sussex asks her if she thinks they live in such an unpredictable world. He thinks it's not too big a problem, and then asks if she could take a walk around the hall with him. The gentleman reports that this is a portrait of Lady Horias, and that she was the Duke's great-aunt. The lady says she's beautiful. The man says that everyone directly related to the Devonshire bloodline is known for their attractiveness, regardless of genders. The Baron reports that when Lady Horias left them, she was about her age and she married the Duke's great-uncle. He was from another country who came as a member of the delegation and fell in love with her at first sight. But she didn't want to marry him, and he heard that she already had a lover, but less than a year after the wedding, she fell into eternal sleep. The man reports that this was discovered after she got married because she was pregnant by her lover, and she had a miscarriage, and the lover was hastily executed. And then the Baron invites her to see the rest and shows her a portrait of Count William, who was a distant relative, but they were close, and he died in the arms of his secret mistress. Another portrait was of Lady Elizabeth, and she was expected to marry a royal, but she fell in love with a commoner and jumped off a cliff to her death. Sussex displays a portrait of the late Duke of Devonshire, his Grace's father. He is confident the lady knows he died in a horrific incident involving his actress mistress with whom he was living at the time. At this time, the main character thought that every person he spoke about died a tragic death because of love. The man asks if she knew that his lordship's middle name, Maximilian, is in honor of his mistress, and that's why his lordship never even mentions his middle name. Then he asks if she could imagine naming her son after his mistress. The Baron says that if she looks at the history of this house, it will not be such a shock, because in their blood lies a curse that leaves a place in their hearts for only one person. The man takes the curtain and asks if she can guess who it is. He tells her it's his lordship's late fiancée, to whom he was engaged before she was born. Sussex says he only wants his lordship to be happy, which is why he shows her this portrait. He believes a relationship cannot be built on deception. The Baron hopes that she understood at least a fraction of the whole truth. The main character asked Melissa to bring her some sleeping pills because she couldn't sleep at all. The maid, surprised, asks if she should bring it again, and then claims that she has been here for a whole week and that the mistress takes sleeping pills almost every day. The maid claims that this is true and hopes that the Duke will return soon, because she believes that the lady is not so easy, and he has gone somewhere, and this cannot be done. Melissa looked at Miss and wondered if everything was okay with her. While the girl was sleeping, he felt someone touch her, and when she opened her eyes, she saw his lordship. He asked if he had woken her, and then apologized because he hadn't meant to. At this time, the main character thought that she would not allow him to fool her again, But she realized that no matter how many times she told herself this, some part of her wanted to believe the opposite. Rowana understands that now everything fell into place, and she found out why he decided to return to her after what happened, because she knows that he was attracted to the shell of the woman he loved. The lady turns to the gentleman and says that while he was gone, she thought about what she really felt and realized that these 5 years that she lived without him were full of sadness. The girl says that she missed him very much and then hugs him and thinks that from that day on, their unreliable relationship turned into something completely different. Rowena openly admitted her defeat, and Killian in turn became more affectionate than ever. They slept together every night, and in the mornings, freshly picked flowers tied with ribbon awaited her after bed. Every day, famous jewelers and tailors came to the Duke's estate, and the beauty of Rowena blossomed again like a flower in spring. When the main character arrives at the ball, the ladies are surprised to hear that she's beautiful and looks exactly the same as she did 5 years ago. But the woman counters saying she'd say the lady has become even more beautiful, really changed lately. Joanna says that she and the Duke have become closer, and at this rate, she will soon become the Duchess of Devonshire. Melissa thought about how Joanna had arrived after that incident, so she didn't know what had happened between them. She was also glad that she and the Duke had gotten along, but she knew she couldn't take the words back. Rowana turns to Melissa and says she's been looking all over her. The maid asks, "Miss, what happened?" The lady suggests going to the terrace because she needs some fresh air. The maid asks the lady if it is possible that she has just had a little too much to drink, and also asks if she is feeling dizzy. The main character claims she's fine, and then says it's cool and easier to breathe there. Melissa says she'll bring her cloak, and the lady thanks hers. Ravana reminds the girl that she wanted to tell her something back then. The maid, surprised, asks what she's talking about. The lady reminds her that she wanted to tell her something, but the Baron interrupted Melissa, sighs, and says she just wanted to say that she'd always really wanted to see her again, then announces that she'll be right back. At that moment, the Duke approached the girl and hugged her. She asked him why he was dressed like a vampire today. He replied that he himself didn't know, and then kissed her neck. Rowana asks if he'll let her go once he's drunk all her red liquid. He replies, "No way," then touches her shoulders again. The girl announces that she has a request and then says she wants Damian to have a teacher. She explains that he himself knows she doesn't have the erudition to teach him. The gentleman agrees and says he'll take care of it. The lady says there's someone she knows and she'd like to recommend. Killian asks who this man is, and then he kisses her again. She asks him not to because Melissa is coming. The Duke asks how she knows him, and she replies that he is one of her favorite writers, which is why she thought he could teach Damian. The gentleman asks his name, and the girl says it's Roderick Deepens. While in a casino, a man. The blonde guy says it's a royal straight flush, and then asks if they'll play again. The gentleman says that at this rate, he will be left penniless, and therefore refuses to continue the game. The winner says that he will meet them next time, and then asks his lordship what he will say. Killian is invited to play again, but first he must get rid of the cheat deck secured under the table. Hearing this, the man is surprised and asks how he knows this, and then says that he will return his money. His lordship says he can keep them for himself because he doesn't care at all. The guy asks what's the matter then, since he knows that the gentleman usually doesn't stay out late. The Duke replies that it's just a matter of taste. The man reads the newspaper and says the shareholders are in huge profit, bragging about their sudden growth, and he understands where this attitude toward money comes from. The guy with blonde hair thinks that the gentleman is probably in seventh heaven. A small company that originated somewhere in a small southern port now controls all maritime traffic passing through Easelwood. It's no surprise that Killian Devonshire chose this port to start his business. This isolated spot, battered by harsh waves, also housed an underground network with vital connections to other countries. The process of reorganizing this network under Killian's leadership could hardly be described as anything other than a small war. He justified his stay there by his desire to visit his wife's homeland. Meanwhile, the gentleman himself had repeatedly visited this southern port to personally oversee the progress of the war. The situation reached its endgame when Killian took by the gills a major organization that refused to surrender to the very end. The gentleman said that if he gives them the list of names, he will live. The man asks if he is Killian Devonshire, and then says that he has heard a lot about him, and that they say his mother was an actress who slept with everyone she met. The man claims that she carried him for his father because his wife was infertile, and then asks if that is true. The man thought that he had given him the lists of names and thought that he would not do anything to him, and the Duke at that time said that he had quickly become bored with him and then finished him off. Killian suggested he come up with a more interesting insult in his next life. Seeing this, the boy thought about how he'd never been shy about getting his hands dirty, and now this gentleman here, in such a suit, even seemed somehow softer. Killian tells the guy to find out if there is a courtesan named Rowena Filoni. The man says that 8 years ago she briefly surfaced and suggests that perhaps she is still doing the same thing, and then asks if that is the name of his favorite. The young man asks if the gentleman needs a courtesan with the same name. He replies that he needs any information, and then says that if he does his job well, he'll receive 3 times the money he currently holds. In the evening when Killian returned home, he approached the girl's room and thought that it was too quiet there, and also assumed that she was in another room. The Duke came into the lady's room and realized that she had gone back to sleep in her own room, but remembered that he had told her to go to bed in his bed. The gentleman kisses the girl, but this time she doesn't wake up, and he thinks that he'll probably let her sleep peacefully for one night. As Killian was about to leave, he heard her plea that Mom and Dad not leave her. He insisted that everything was fine, and that it would only be that way from now on. The man returned to the girl's bed and said that he would do everything to ensure that she never cried again. And the man who was driving the carriage when he arrived at the luxurious mansion asked the sir if he was sure that they were going there. The writer thanked the man for giving him a ride, and standing at the gates of the mansion, he thought that he had finally reached the house where this bastard was holding his precious niece. The gentleman's assistant met the man and said that he believes it is Mr. Roderick Deepens, then says that he is glad to meet him and informs that his name is Jenoch and he is the Duke's secretary. Uncle says that his efficiency runs ahead of him and he is only a mediocre writer, but the gentleman already knows his name. Jenoch reports that he couldn't help but notice that the teacher arrived in a cart, and then reports that they did send a carriage for him. Roderick explains that he simply doesn't really like riding in expensive carriages because he thinks they're a bit cramped. The assistant says that if he had warned them in advance, they would have taken appropriate measures, and therefore apologizes, and then asks if this is all his luggage. The teacher says that these are all his things, and the assistant offers to follow him, and then shows him his room, which will be his for the time that he is here. Jenoch reports that he can discuss the details with Miss Filoni, and that the contract is for 6 months and can be extended if necessary. The secretary informs them that their free time is theirs alone, and they are free to spend it as they please. However, they must remember that whatever happens in this house must stay in this house. Jenoch asks the teacher what he's doing. Roderick tells him not to worry, as he believes he only has one life and isn't going to risk it by spreading gossip. The secretary says he is glad they understood each other, and then says that he thought hiring such an outstanding person would be very difficult, and thanks them for agreeing to this job. The teacher says that writers are people too, and he just wants to make money, and then asks when he can see Miss Filoni. The assistant informs him that his bath is ready and asks him to take a moment to enjoy it. Afterwards, he leads him to Miss Filoni. He says he'll be back soon and takes his leave. When the young man left the teacher's room, he thought that he was a rare scumbag and that he could see right through such money-hungry bastards. But he would tell his lordship that there was nothing to worry about. After some time, the secretary introduces the teacher to Miss Filoni, and the lady says that it is an honor for her to see him in person. Roderick says that he is also glad to meet them, and he heard that she is an avid reader of his works. The lady says she's read all of his books, or maybe she claims she's too kind, and then says he knows only masterpieces have come from his pen. Hearing this, Jenoch says he needs to go on business, and will leave them. Then he leaves. When they are alone, the girl turns to her uncle, and he asks what is going on, and also inquires whether she is the Duke's favorite. Uncle reports that on the way to the capital, he heard a huge number of rumors, and is also interested in what happened to her during this time. Rowena says that she will tell him everything, and told Jeremy everything that happened to her, how she became the Duke's favorite after her friend's betrayal, and how she was abandoned on the island, and how she was returned after the birth of Damian. The uncle says in surprise that she now has a child, and he will teach her son, and then says that he cannot even imagine how she went through all this at her age because all this breaks his heart. The girl assures that everything is fine now, but he says that he doesn't think Damian will be happy here. The main character explains that this is why she needs his help, but she understands that it will not be easy since the Duke is not some ordinary aristocrat. Jeremy suggests that she wait, and then asks if she said that the island where he left her is a resort somewhere in the south. And after thinking a little, he says that there is probably a way. A few days later, the Duke asks the lady how her tutor is, and then reports that Jinok said he is a bit of an oddball. Rowana agrees with him and says that he has a couple of quirks, but he is a wonderful teacher. But both she and Damian like him, and the Duke says he's glad to hear it, and then asks what she's been up to today. The lady explains that she went to the salon with Countess Selina, and that she's organizing a charity event at the end of the year, so she asked for her help, and she decided to respond. Even in her time as Rowena's favorite, she regularly received invitations from aristocrats. But this was only to advertise these events, or to gain the Duke's trust. Therefore, asking for help in organizing something so important was new to her, and it was direct proof that Rowena's social status in high society had risen to that of a duchess. The main character reports that she was very impressed by the banquet the day before, and thinks that she will be busy with preparations for some time, because she needs to write an invitation and hire musicians and a chef too. Killian reminds her that he asked her a question, then kisses her neck and asks what else she needs to do. She replies that she needs to figure out how to arrange the vases and position the waiters. The gentleman says that she seems to be trying very hard, and then says that the butler is also very pleased and thinks that she can be trusted with the keys to the wine cellar. Hearing this, the girl was surprised and thought that the keys to the wine cellar were a symbol that he entrusted her with all the estate's affairs. And what she had dreamed of 5 years ago was coming true. However, the main character understands that reality is always an imitation and that a dream always loses in everything. And then she says that she is not ready yet because she still has a lot to learn and asks if he understands her. Killian, surprised, asks if she is playing with him, and then says that he agrees to play along with her as long as everything goes as usual, because he does not care what is going on in her head. Even if she secretly hates him and wants to finish him off, then he absolutely does not care. Rowena asks not to say such a thing, and then explains that she just needs time to think. The girl thought that he knew he'd treated her cruelly that time, and he understood that, but she didn't love him, no matter how many times she told him otherwise. She wondered what this man was thinking, and assumed he thought they could start over. The lady turns to the Duke and says she has a favor to ask. Then she remembers her uncle's words to listen carefully, knowing she has a way to escape. The teacher says he'll do anything to get her and Damian out of here. He suggests asking the Duke to take her to the island on the date he specified. Rowena tells the gentleman that next summer she wants to visit that island again, and at that time she thought about the island where he left her and married another woman. The maid asks the young gentleman what he does and whether he reads anything. The boy says he liked Mr. Diffin's book. The maid, surprised, says the book looks like a manuscript. The young master explains that's because it hasn't been published yet, then reveals that the main character shares his name. Melissa asks what the book is about. The boy explains that the main character, Damian, lived happily with his mother, even though they didn't have much money. But one day, an evil dragon came and took his mother, and the brave Damian decided to gather his friends to save her, and went to the good sorcerer for advice. At this time, the teacher came into the room and said that he was interested in what they were chatting about here, and then said that he had not yet sent this manuscript to the publishing house, because it was not yet for everyone. When the child saw the teacher, he ran up to him and hugged him. Roderick wished him good morning and asked him to return the manuscript, asking the maid why she had come. The maid explains that she simply wanted to check on the young master. He says Melissa is the Mrs. Personal servant and asks if she's allowed to just wander around the mansion when she's not working. The girl was surprised when she heard this and then asked him to forgive her. He suggested she be more careful next time and said she was free to go. Damian, surprised, asks Mr. why he's doing this to her, then insists that Melissa is good. Roderick says he has a bad feeling about this, then reminds him that he asked the boy to call him Uncle when no one is around. The child says he's his mother's uncle, which makes him his grandfather, and asks if that's true. The man replies that he's smart and suggests calling him uncle anyway. Then he explains that his mother is going to the capital today and he'll be seeing her in 2 days. The uncle asks the boy if he remembers what he told him. He replies that the master asked him to pretend he didn't notice or hear anything, and the teacher says that the affairs of adults are much more complicated than it may seem to him, and therefore suggests not to forget that he is not guilty of anything. Roderick asks if he finished the homework he gave him yesterday, because he understands that there was a lot of it. The child claims it's too early for the lesson and asks if he has time to finish it. The man says he seems suspicious and offers to show him what he's done. The maid did her mistress's hair and said that everything was ready, and then asserted that she was very beautiful, and the weather was warm now, but she would arrive in the capital closer to nightfall, and therefore thought it best to put on a shawl. The mistress agrees with her and asks Melissa if everything is all right, as she thinks she's a bit upset today. The maid explains that she went to check on Damian this morning and was scolded by the teacher. The lady smiled and asked if it was true, and then said that sometimes he gets a little scared, and wondered if she would give her a shawl. The maid said that of course she would do it and would return right away, and then quickly ran off. Joanna asked Miss if she had noticed anything strange about her, and whispered in the lady's ear that she regularly ran to see someone, and it was that secretary of his lordship. Rowana asked the maid if she was sure Joanna said she knew they were roommates, and that she'd been sneaking out late at night lately. The maid explains that at first, she thought she was just out for a walk, but the fact that Melissa left almost every night seemed strange to her, and so she decided to follow her. The lady asks what she learned. Joanna says that she saw Melissa meet Mr. Jennick in the servants' dining room. The mistress was surprised when she heard this and wondered why they were hiding. The maid explained that it was because servants were forbidden from having romantic relationships with each other. Joanna says that Mr. Jennick works directly under his lordship and believes that there is a huge gap between him and Melissa because they have a love that is not afraid even of the difference in social status. Rowana heard footsteps and said Melissa was running quickly, then invited her in. At that moment, a gentleman entered the room and said he was disappointed because the lady didn't recognize him by his footsteps. The main character asks him in surprise why he came, then explains that they only have a few hours before leaving. He asks why the girl is moving away, and then approaches her. The lady explains that she was just a little embarrassed, and the master asks what she's hiding from him. At this point, the maid quickly leaves. Killian touched the girl's face and said that she had definitely been worried about something lately. Rowana says she wants to ask him a question, and he says he's all ears. She asks if he's thought about her request, and says that every time she thinks about that island, only bad memories come to mind, and she'd like to rewrite them with new good ones. The Duke tells her to turn to the mirror and close her eyes, and then says that first, they will go to the capital and arrange as many receptions as they want, and watch as many performances as they want. The gentleman says that later, they will both go to that ill-fated island. He puts the necklace around the lady's neck and asks if she likes it. The girl says it's beautiful, and then asks if it's not a royal family heirloom. Killian reminds her that she used to wear something similar, and asks why it bothers her so much now. At this point, the protagonist reflects on how blind and naive she was back then, not understanding how the world works. She didn't know what she could and couldn't do. Rowana didn't realize that people would point fingers at her if she wore something so expensive, and she had no idea that she had become a woman who was embarrassing to appear before God. The girl says that if it really is a family heirloom, she shouldn't wear it. Hearing this, the gentleman insists that nothing has fundamentally changed since then, and reminds her that he already told her that she simply should behave appropriately. The Duke tells her not to question anything, and not to ask unnecessary questions, but to eat the food he feeds her, and wear the clothes he chooses for her, and also to do exactly what he suggests she do. The main character agrees with him, and at this time the maid says that she is Melissa, and asks if she can come in. Rowana invites her in, while the Duke kisses his mistress on the lips. Seeing this, the maid tells her mistress that she will wait for her outside. A few minutes later, when the Duke left, Melissa asks where Joanna is, and Miss replies that she left when the Duke came in. The maid apologizes for taking so long to find the shawl, and the lady says it's okay, and then asks if she will help him put it on. Melissa asks if the lady is planning a long stay in the capital. She replies that they'll stay there all spring and then head to the island in the summer, reminding her that she's been there once before. The maid, surprised, asks if she's sure. The mistress replies that she is, because she believes the past should remain the past. Melissa turns to his lordship and says that she must tell him something, and then informs him that everything was a lie, and Miss Rowana remained faithful to him. Hearing this, the Duke asks who ordered her to lie, and she replies that it was Baron Sussex. Hearing this, the gentleman thought that it was him, and his premonition had not failed him, and suggested that she act as if nothing had happened. The Duke tells her to behave with the miss as always, and to report to him about everything she does, and not to dare lie to him anymore. The boy who was selling the newspaper shouted that there was fresh news, and that Duke Killian Devonshire was returning to the capital with his favorite. The Duke of Devonshire once used his wedding and subsequent honeymoon as excuses to stay away from the capital. So, as soon as the newspapers learned that he was returning to the company of his former mistress, a real scandal erupted. And the ladies were surprised since nothing had been heard from this mistress for 5 years. Countess Rachel reports that a relative of hers who lives near the Duke said that she has not changed at all over the years. The Marquise says she feels uneasy, having been kicked out in disgrace by the man she'd been with for 3 years, only to return to him like a loyal little dog. Her friend agrees, as she's amazed at what people are capable of for money and power. The Countess says it's just a proposal, and then asks, what if she suddenly becomes pregnant without his knowledge? The woman in the yellow dress, surprised, says that's impossible and she'd never believe it. The Marquise claims that such a thing cannot be dismissed, because there were rumors that the previous Duchess could not have children, and if his favorite suddenly became pregnant with his child, then this would perfectly explain why he decided to bring her back. The lady claims that she would voluntarily become his favorite again, dreaming of being the mother of the future Duke. The Viscountess says that his lordship has received her for 4 months already, and if her assumption was correct, he would have known the Duke and announced his heir long ago. The Countess reports that if she were the Duke, she wouldn't want a child born out of wedlock to be the heir. She would secretly order Miss Falone's execution and announce that the child was his ex-wife's. The woman explains that she is simply saying that their theory is wrong, and suggests they talk about something else, since they are, after all, sophisticated people. The Baroness asks how to understand such a vulgar woman, and the Countess asserts that they should be so much above this topic. At this time, the main character enters the room and says that she sees that the conversation is in full swing, and then says that they haven't seen each other for a long time and asks how they are doing. The Countess turns to the miss and says that they didn't notice her arrival. Rowana apologizes and then explains that she just overheard their conversation from the waiting room, and it turned out to be so interesting that she didn't dare interrupt it. The Marchioness says it's nothing to worry about and invites Miss Falone to sit down. But the Viscountess objects, saying the seat belongs to a respected aristocrat. She fears that a woman who isn't one shouldn't occupy it, as she believes it would cast Countess Rachel in a bad light. Rowana turns to the Viscountess and says that she is extremely brave, and then reports that with this remark, she insulted not only the Countess who invited her, but also the Duke of Devonshire. The main character asks if she will take responsibility for her words. Hearing this, the woman screams and says she merely pointed out someone who shouldn't be there. The lady doesn't understand why this woman is behaving so differently, because 5 years ago she stood there as if she had kept her mouth shut, even though she was cursing her out loud. The Viscountess considers the girl a slob who would never have been there if it weren't for her beauty, and then turns to Miss Falone and says that she understands her lack of education and knowledge of etiquette, but believes that there are things that are considered acceptable and things that should not be allowed. The woman says they rely on a person's social status and position in society. Rowana thanks her for the lesson, and the woman says that if only she had understood everything back then. The main character asks to be allowed to ask her one question, and then asks whether it is considered acceptable to spread dirty false gossip about a member of the royal family or not. Hearing this, the Viscountess explains that she didn't mean anything like that, because they were just chatting, and doesn't understand why she suddenly accuses her of something like that. Rowana asks if she's willing to walk and repeat the same words in front of other people, then admits she was just chatting harmlessly. And for example, could she say those words in front of Duke Killian Devonshire? She suggests they walk together to his place, At this time, the Viscountess thought that the Duke of Devonshire was cruel and merciless, and everyone knew it, and if she ended up on his bad side. The lady explains that she did not think it through properly, and therefore apologizes to Miss Filone, and will be more careful with her words in the future. The Countess turns to the Miss and says that Lady Estelle is very sorry, and therefore hopes that the lady will find it in herself to be generous enough to forgive her. The lady says that her words clearly showed disrespect for the royal family, and such behavior cannot be left unpunished, and therefore from now on, she will not invite Viscountess Estelle to her receptions. The main character thought that Countess Rachel's influence on the capital's high society was difficult to overestimate, and with these statements, she not only severed all ties with the Viscountess, but she also, one might say, banished her from high society. Hearing this, the Viscountess falls to her knees and begs Countess Rachel for anything but that. Meanwhile, the Countess turns to the servants and says their mistress is drunk and irresponsible for her actions, and therefore asks to be escorted to the sofa. Mistress Rachel turns to the lady and says that as the person who invited her, and the Duke here, she apologizes for what she had to witness. Rowana believes the lady has nothing to apologize for. The Countess says they now have 2 seats available and always leave one just in case of unexpected guests, but she understands that 2 is too many and would be very grateful if the lady would take one of them. After the ball, Killian says that he is tired, and the girl asks if he had a lot to do. The man says that he heard that there was a small incident today, and as far as he knows, the girl mentioned the royal family. Rowana replies that it was unreasonable on her part, and the gentleman suggests that she continue in the same spirit and not let them wipe their feet on her, and let her continue to act the same way as today, since she understands that it is better than crying later. Hearing this, the girl asks in surprise how he knows that she was crying, and the Duke asks her to be quieter, then unbuttons her shirt and says that he believes that she deserves a reward. The next morning, the man entered the girl's room and informed her that his lordship had left early in the morning, and he asked her to forgive him for his intrusion. The main character asks Mr. Janoc what he's doing in the Duke's room. The man replies that the gentleman wanted him to ask her something, and then asks if she knows a woman named Carol Bertimer. Hearing this name, the girl thought that naturally she knew, after all this, was her former friend who had invited her to the capital and then run away, leaving her with a huge debt. And no matter how hard she searched, she couldn't find her. Rowana asks how he knows that name. The man insists that means she knows her, then informs her that his lordship left her some instructions and suggests she go with the maid to that address. When the maid saw a street with many poor people, she asked her mistress if she thought they had come to some bad place, and also wondered if they could have gotten the wrong address. The lady claims that the place is correct, and the address is correct. Melissa tells Miss that something is definitely wrong there, as his lordship would never send her to such a place. The lady says that if she's scared, she can wait in the carriage. When the main character entered the house, she thought it was the very place, and she climbed those same steps, half filled with anticipation, half filled with excitement. But this was on the first day she arrived in the capital. The name of her old friend, who betrayed her address, where she arrived on her first day in the capital, and therefore she understands that this is not just a coincidence, but also interesting what Killian is trying to achieve. When Ravana opened the door, she saw a tied-up girl asking for mercy. Carol asks if he recognizes her and asks for her help. The Duke says he was waiting for her and asks if she remembers his promise, then reminds her that he said the girl would receive a reward. Killian reveals that Carol was hiding under her name and working as a courtesan, and then reveals that he doesn't like debts because everything she receives, both as an act of generosity and as an act of betrayal, comes from other people's debts, and he always pays his own. The man hands the lady a gun and tells her it's time for her to go too. However, the woman holding the gun does nothing. The Duke asks if she is really not offended by her, because if he were in her place, he would be seething with anger, and he thinks that if she cannot pull the trigger herself, then she should ask someone else. Killian claims that if she feels she doesn't deserve a quick, painless death, he says he can leave her alive and take revenge as much as she wants. Rowana says she refuses, and that she'd be lying if she said she hates her and doesn't curse her. The girl swears that if she sees Carol again, she'll hit her hard. Hearing this, the ex-girlfriend began to cry. And the main character said that she doesn't want such revenge because she believes it's simply wrong. The Duke asks if what she did was right. The girl explains that she understands that Carol used and betrayed her, but she will not be like her. At that moment, she thought about how she is not like Carol and will not live like the Duke. The gentleman looked at the lady in surprise and said that she could do as she saw fit. Rowena approached the girl, who frightened asked her not to approach. The lady untied her hands and calmed her down. Carol asked her for forgiveness, and the main character assured that she was now safe, and at that time lost consciousness. The Duke quickly picked up the girl and said that she was probably overexcited, and her ex-girlfriend asked him not to finish her off. Killian informs her that the lady spared her, and he respects her choice, and then informs her that she will have to pay, because he is not like Rowena. Герцог привез девушку домой и подумал о том, что барон Бенедикт Сассекс был верным слугой и первый человек, что протянул ему руку, когда он осиротел, и посему он даже не сомневался в его словах, что он сказал 5 лет назад. The gentleman realized he hadn't even imagined that his faithful dog had been yearning to tear the throat of his most precious possession all this time, and so he wanted to finish him off right now, but if he wasn't careful, he'd pay for it later. The man thought about the woman who refused revenge, although the traitor was right in front of her, and he wanted to test her dignity so that they would be in the same boat and on the same level. But she chose forgiveness, although the traitor was right in front of her and the weapon was in her hands. Killian looked at the girl and said that if she was able to forgive her, then this means that not all is lost for him. The maid informs her mistress that she is entering, and when she sees his lordship, she apologizes. He asks if the child is in the house and where he is now. Hearing this, Joanna thought about what she heard, that the gentleman did not like young Master Damian very much, and he fell asleep in the carriage, so the nanny carried him to his room. The Duke said that while Rowena was sleeping, he would check on the boy. Then he went into the child's room. The man touched the boy's hair and realized that he was his son, whose existence he had never even known or even suspected his entire life. At this time, Damian felt someone's warm and soft hand, and he began to wonder who was stroking him, the nanny or his mother. But he understood that the feeling was different, and as if something was really missing from him. The next morning, the maid tells the young master that he woke up early today, and she thinks he is in a good mood. Damian says he had a good dream and doesn't remember what it was, then asks when he can see his mother. The nanny says that there is a large park nearby, and he asks in surprise if he can leave the house if he wants. The woman says that she herself was surprised when the Duke gave her permission, and then asks if it really is amazing. Damian happily says that there are ducks swimming in this lake, and the nanny says that he is a sweet boy, and asks him not to go anywhere because she will take something to eat. When the nanny left, the Duke approached the boy and sat down next to him. The child said it was occupied, and the Duke said he didn't even know public benches were owned. And then he thought about how handsome he was, but so mean. Killian asks what he's so fascinated by. Damian explains that there's a family of ducks swimming on the lake, and he adores them because they're his favorite animal. The man asks why there are ducks, and the child says that the mother duck always stays with the father duck, and together they protect and love their children, and he is always very happy when he sees ducks. The young gentleman says he also has a family, including his mother. The Duke asks about his father. The boy explains that his mother said that his father is somewhere far away and therefore cannot come to them, but he thinks that if they met, he would love him very much. Damian believes that they may be far apart now, but he'll know he's his son the moment he sees him. Hearing this, the gentleman agrees and says he thinks it will be so. Suddenly, the servant tells the master to quickly leave here because the wolf escaped from the zoo and is now wandering around this park somewhere nearby. Hearing this, Killian became worried because the child was still next to him. Damian approached the gentleman and suggested they look at the wolf approaching them. The Duke quickly grabbed the boy in his arms, but the wolf attacked him. However, the guards quickly dispatched the beast. The nanny anxiously asks the child if he's hurt. The boy assures her he's fine, but the man then looks to see him but doesn't understand where he's gone. The nanny claims that things could have been much worse and therefore suggests returning. At this time, the main character woke up and thought that these were her capital chambers, and she lost consciousness. The maid asks her mistress if she's awake and then inquires how she's feeling. The lady replies that she's not unwell and asks if she can get her some water, then inquires how long she'd been unconscious. Melissa reports that she slept all day, and the protagonist asks what happened to the woman. The maid replies that she saw her go off with the Duke, and he decided to let Carol go. The maid says that he took a written promise from her that she would never do anything like that again. Ravana asks where the Duke is now, and the maid explains that he said that he would be gone for a while because he had business, and he also said that if the lady wanted, she could sleep with the young master Damian. Hearing this, the main character, surprised, asked if her son was there. At that moment, the boy came up to her and hugged her. He said he missed her and then asked if his mother missed him. Rowana asks how he is doing, and the child says that today he was in the park and a wolf attacked him and almost bit him, but an uncle saved him. The main character thanks God and then says she's very glad her son is okay and hugs him. She asks who saved him and if he asked the man's name. Damian replies that he hurt his hand because of him and then asks his mother if he can go to that park again. The woman, surprised, asks why, and the child says he wants to see that guy again. The next day, they sat in the park for a very long time, but the man Damian was looking for never showed up. Mom asks if the man might be in the hospital because he's injured. Melissa says that if the injury is serious, she might look for him. The lady thanked the maid and then said that she would also ask Mr. Jenock for help because she wanted to personally thank the man who saved his son. Melissa asks the lady if she has already heard the news, and then reports that the newspaper says that from tomorrow and throughout the week, the royal hunting grounds will be open to ordinary people. Hearing this, the boy became interested, and the maid explained that it was a large forest with lots of rabbits and deer. The child turned to his mother and said that he wanted to go there too. Ravana says that if he behaves well, they'll go there because he'll have to eat all the vegetables and obey the nanny. The boy agrees. The maid reports that a woman has stopped the carriage and is coming toward them. The protagonist hears that the voice belongs to Duchess Rachel, who asks the maid to hide the boy. The lady got out of the carriage and greeted the Duchess. Rachel said she thought it was her, and then asked if she was returning from somewhere. The Duchess says the weather is absolutely wonderful today and asks why she curtained the carriage. Lydia explains that she simply didn't want to attract unnecessary attention and decided to get some fresh air today by taking a walk in the park. But suddenly, the child sneezed, and the mistress asked who was with her. Rowana replied that she was with the maid, and Rachel said she thought she heard a child sneeze, then explained that she had 4 of her own and always recognized that sound. The Duchess saw the child's leg and then said he was a little gentleman and asked why he was hiding. The lady replied that he was the Duke's nephew, a distant relative from abroad, and that he didn't speak the language very well, so he was shy. Hearing this, the lady reports that this is the first time she has heard that the Duke has a nephew, and asks the lady to steal a couple of minutes from her. And the ladies are wondering if this is necessary right now, and the woman claims that it is very important, and she will not regret it. The lady tells Melissa that she will be away for a short while, and asks her to look after the child. The Duchess asks the lady if she understands that her current position is very precarious, but she thinks that, judging by her reaction, she does not. Rachel says that the queen invited the daughter of the Marquis of Taldon to the royal castle, and she entered through the back door and not the main entrance. The protagonist asks what this means. The mistress explains that Miss Philena is one of the most innocent girls she's ever met, meaning the queen secretly chose Lady Taldon for the role of Duchess of Devonshire. Then she asks if she's noticed any changes in the Duke. At this time, the girl remembered the maid's words, that he had urgent business and would be gone for some time, and she could sleep with the young master. The Duchess looked at the lady and said that she understood that the news might shock her, but there was nothing she could do about it, because aristocrats are not always successful in choosing a spouse. The lady offers Miss Philone to listen to this, that maybe she is only his favorite, but as long as he has the support of the Duke, she can get all the power she wants. The woman reports that the Duchess has been neglected, and her husband's love will be nothing more than a puppet in his hands, and reminds him that she kicked out Viscountess Estelle and can therefore take her place, as she believes that they are now in the same boat. The Duchess asserts that she will do everything in her power to help her maintain the Duke's favor. The lady says she understands and thanks her, then asks permission to ask her a question. Rowana asks the Marquis's daughter if she's a green-eyed blonde. Rachel replies that she can't say for sure about her eyes, but she's heard she's a brunette. The main character doesn't understand why she suddenly became interested in this, because she thinks that marriage might mean nothing to him and not evoke a response in his soul, since his favorite is enough for him to replace the woman he loves. The girl asks if the Duke will marry a second time, because she believes that there is no longer any need to run away, because if the wedding happens, they will get rid of her again. Rowana realizes that she needs to keep Damian's secret for as long as possible. The uncle turns to the girl, and she says that from the very beginning, she was just a toy and a replacement for his beloved one, and believes that now he will have a new toy, and he will not need the old one that he played with before. Jeremy says that he cannot believe that Damian is the son of such a cruel, heartless man, and then suggests that Rowena calm down since not everything is as it seems to her, because he believes that the Duke does not plan to let her go. The man thought that ever since he arrived here, he had been watching very closely how he led her next to him, and there was always only one expression on his face, and that was a dark, frightening obsession. The main character asks if he really thinks so, and the uncle assures that his intuition has never deceived him and believes that they have nothing to be happy about. Jeremy remained silent, because he thought it was better to keep his opinion to himself, because he understood that if he said it, her feelings for him would flare up again. Their sudden freedom did not last long. Killian, who had been missing for some time, suddenly reappeared in the middle of the night. Ravana greeted the gentleman and said he'd disappeared without saying anything, then explained that she'd been very worried. He asked surprised if she'd really been worried about him. The lady claims that she always worries when he is not around, and at that time, she thought that something in him seemed to have changed, but she cannot understand what exactly, because she has the same feeling as after a long separation of 5 years. The girl looked at his hand and asked what happened to it. He said he cut himself on some glass, and there was nothing to worry about. The main character suggests not saying that, since he even wears a bandage. The Duke says he never thought she was so interested in what he does, then reveals that 5 years ago she was just as curious and asks if this is a new habit. Ravana claims that he seems upset about something, and then says that she will sleep in another room today. Killian says he wants to ask her something, and then asks what her life has been like in the 5 years he's been gone. Hearing this, the main character was surprised, because he had never asked her this question since their reunion. And even more so, he had always been extremely careful about avoiding this topic, and seemed to want to cut this moment of his life out of his memory. The girl asks why he is asking, and the man replies that he just became curious. The lady says that her life was normal, and maybe she was pathetic as he called her, but she lived peacefully and happily, and maybe she is happier than ever. Milady reflects on the fact that she does not want to cry in front of him, and then says that if such an answer is enough for him, then she asks him to forgive her. The Duke asks how the birth went, and she's surprised, asks why he needs to know this, and then says that she almost died because she went to work with a protruding belly, and one cold winter night, she simply gave birth in an old house after a day of work. Rowana says that this is it, and that's all, no more no less, and then asks if he was pleased by the stories about how worthless her life was. And if that's all he wanted to know, then she wants to leave. Killian says he's been thinking about getting a dog, and this time, it's a commitment he's making permanent. The gentleman says that fox hunting season is about to begin, and an obedient hound would not hurt him, so tomorrow they will go to the breeder and see what he has, and the child will go with them. Hearing this, the main character is surprised and says he won't like being around a child, and he asks why she thinks so. The lady explains that this has always been the case. The Duke then suggests leaving Damian with the nanny away from him so that she doesn't have to see him, and then asks if she's happy. Rowana asks why he wants to take his son with them, and he replies that it is because children understand animals better than adults. The seller says that this is the most popular breed and points to a small puppy, and then says that he has a good pedigree and is very well trained, and he is also very brave and can fight with an animal 10 times his size. The gentleman says that fighting an animal 10 times larger is more stupidity than courage, and asks if he thinks so. At this time, the man thought that when he heard that the Duke of Devonshire would come to him, he prepared as well as he could, but he understands that serving him is even more difficult than he thought. The seller looked at the lady who was with the gentleman and thought that this was the same Rowena Falone, and thought that he did not need a potter's pet for his favorite. The man announces that they have another adorable little one, then asks what he thinks, and wonders if this little one isn't cute. The lady looked at the puppy with delight. Meanwhile, the dog ran up to the young gentleman and started playing with him. The seller apologized and then asked if the young gentleman was okay. Damian insists everything is fine and that this puppy just liked him. The man says he doesn't have a pedigree and is a bit stupid, so no one will take him. They were planning to euthanize him today and can't believe it happened. The boy asks in surprise how to put it to sleep, and the seller explains what it means. But the Duke interrupts him and says that they will take this puppy for themselves, and then asks Genoc to pay. The gentleman said that they needed to go somewhere, and the boy was delighted and took the puppy in his arms. Rowana asks Killian where they are going, and he asks why it took her so long to get ready, and then takes her hand and suggests that they go faster. At this time, the main character thought that from their very first meeting in public, he always kept his distance from her and regularly took her to public places. But a favorite is just a favorite. The lady understands that, unlike his wife, with whom he has an oath before God, the favorite can never raise her head, and therefore she is afraid because she does not like it, but against the warmth of his hand, against the sudden changes in his behavior, and against her desire to give him another chance. Rowana suggests the gentleman let her go because people are watching. He says the lady is being outgoing today and asks why she's so embarrassed knowing they've done worse. The girl explains that this is not the issue, and he says that they have already arrived. Seeing the building, the main character was surprised because it was the best studio in the capital. The worker offers the lady to take her measurements, while the Duke shows her the dress he likes. When the lady puts on the dress, the girls enthusiastically say that she looks stunning. Rowana turns to his lordship and informs him that the dress is too beautiful for her, and she feels it doesn't suit her. Killian touches her hair and says he thinks it suits her perfectly. After that, they went to a jewelry store and bought accessories, and the main character was completely exhausted. Sitting in the carriage, the girl asks what all this was about, and the gentleman asks what exactly. She explains that he suddenly took her hand in public and bought her an expensive dress, and then asks what the purpose of this ostentatious display of affection was. The Duke replies that it's because he wants to, and asks if he needs a good reason. She says he's simply worried he'll get into trouble if they attract so much attention. After all, he's getting married soon. The gentleman looked at the girl in surprise, and she said that she had heard that the Queen had already chosen a new wife for him, and therefore believed that if his potential wife found out about their walk today, she would be upset. But the Duke interrupts the lady and asks who told her this, and tells her not to keep her in suspense, because he is very interested and would be happy to know who they are going to marry him to. At this time, the main character thought that she was wrong, because she shouldn't have told him anything, because he solves his problems differently from other people, and thinks that it's impossible to understand him, and it's better not to even try. Ravana says she doesn't know anything else, and just heard it out of the corner of her ear. He says that, judging by how this conversation started, she doesn't really know anything about it either, but she's still really looking forward to him getting married again. Killian comes closer to the girl and asks her to speak honestly, and then asks if she wants him to marry another woman and have a child with her. The lady does not understand why he is asking such an obvious question, because she sincerely wants to be free from this man, but at the same time does not want to see another woman near the Duke. The main character believes that he used her as a replacement for his dead bride and ruined her life, and therefore does not want him to fall in love with another woman and live happily with her. Rowana says that she is not from a noble family, and her past is also not worthy of mentioning, and she did not even entertain the idea that she could become a duchess because she is smart enough to understand that their relationship must end. And at this time, the Duke kisses the lady, and she understands that their relationship will end in disaster, and this cannot be changed, and if this is God's will, then she hopes that he will forgive her a little evil, because she wants to tear Killian's heart into pieces. The main character thought about how she wanted him to suffer more than she had, and that to completely fool him, she would have to mix love and hate. However, she realized that if she just whispered sweet nothings to him, he would immediately understand. The girl believes that she needs to be so sincere that she herself does not understand whether she is pretending or not. Rowana informs the master that she will have a request that he take her with him on the upcoming hunt and treat her the same way as he did today in front of his future bride. Countess Rachel says that fox hunting season is just around the corner, and the Duke of Devonshire is going to participate and asks if this is the right thing to do. The lady says she'll go with him too. And the mistress, hearing this, declares that she's much smarter than she thought, and says that every dog already knows how she and the Duke recently walked hand in hand. The Countess says that it doesn't matter whether it was intentional or not, because she believes that what is more important is that the Duke's affection for her is unwavering. Rachel says that she never thought that something like this was typical for him, and she was very surprised, and therefore believes that men really do change when they are attracted to a woman. The Countess claims that she is doing very well, and therefore suggests that Miss Filone continue in the same spirit. The girl asks to be allowed to ask something, and then wonders why the Countess is helping her, since she thinks that she is not an aristocrat, and asks if it would not be easier to support the lady from the Talden house. The lady claims she's asking very bold questions, and the lady apologized for overstepping. The Countess says there's nothing to worry about, and reports that 5 years ago she didn't have the best opinion of her. The woman reports that in front of her there was a beautiful girl who was unhappy, and although she was dressed in an expensive dress and hung with jewelry, she could not even imagine why she would suddenly decide to run away. The Countess says that when the lady returned, she saw a completely different woman in front of her, and she was captivated by how she put Viscountess Estelle in her place without even blinking an eye. Rachel says she wants to know what changed her so much. Meanwhile, the protagonist is thinking about how she's changed and thinks she should thank Damian for it. The lady asks if she will tell her what caused this. The girl replies that unfortunately she cannot, as it is a secret. The lady says she knew it and then suggests they go because she's found a wonderful spot in the sun to have tea. Ravenna says that sounds wonderful. Suddenly, the main character saw an umbrella that had fallen to the ground, and Viscountess Estelle, who said that she understood who had such bad manners, and offered to apologize to the girl she had bumped into. Rowana says that she was just about to, and the Viscountess asks if this is her apology, and insists that she apologize properly, because the girl she had the audacity to bump into is Lady Talden, the daughter of the Marquis of Talden. Lady Talden turns to Estelle and asks if she spoke about her, and offers to give Miss Filone a moment. Marquise Veronica Talden reports that she is confused, because she thought that such women sleep during the day and work at night. The main character heard this and was surprised, but the Countess said that this was a bit inconsistent and said that her name was Rachel, and she was sure that they had met with her older sister. The Marchioness, surprised, asks if she is Countess Roderick's sister, the royal lady-in-waiting. The lady asserts that she is indeed, and that she had heard that she had arrived in the capital and was therefore planning to send her an invitation. Hearing this, Veronica thought that Countess Rachel occupies a very important place in the capital's high society and therefore considers it better to make a good impression on her. The Marchioness says she would be very pleased to be invited by such a worthy woman. The Countess thanks her for the kind words and apologizes for her friend's ignorance. Veronica claims that this is not the case, and claims that they just bumped into each other by chance, and then asks Viscountess Estelle to pick up Miss Filone's umbrella. Hearing this, the Viscountess was surprised, and asked why all of a sudden, and the Marquise asked if she wanted to say that she should bend over after him. Estelle picked up her umbrella and asked Miss Filone to hold it, then said that she would take her leave and that the Marquise wished them a pleasant day. The Countess suggests that the main thing for the girl is not to be nervous, since she knows that Lady Veronica began to behave differently when she found out who she was. And this means that she needs the approval of the capital's aristocracy. Rachel says she can understand since even after her debut, she lived in her hometown and her health didn't allow for anything else. However, that's not the point, since she shamelessly insulted them even though they were meeting for the first time. The Countess reports that after this, she forced Viscountess Estelle, her comrade, to do something humiliating, and she does not even try to protect her people. Rowena asks if the woman wants to say she won't cause any problems. Rachel insists that she's glad they understand each other. A Jinok approaches them and turns to the main character and says that he needs to tell her something, and then says that he will take her to the estate. The assistant reports that something bad happened to the young gentleman Damian, and that this morning he and the nanny were walking the dog, but the leash broke, and the dog ran away. Mr. Damian ran after him, and the dog led him to a disadvantaged area, and there they came across a homeless man. The main character asks what he's talking about and what's wrong with Damian. The man replies that fortunately he only got off with a scratch, and the homeless man was arrested. Hearing this, the lady says that everything could have been much worse, and then claims that he should have protected him, since it was he who forced them to live here. Rowana sighed and then apologized and said that she knows that he is not to blame, but Janak claims that it is the opposite, and he believes that he is absolutely to blame and therefore apologizes. The lady asks where her son is now, and the man says that he is already asleep, and therefore she will be able to see him tomorrow morning. At this time, the boy was lying in his bed and sleeping, and when he opened his eyes, he saw a young gentleman and said, "Is it really the man from the park?" and asked if he was dreaming. Killian says he doesn't know and asks what he thinks. The child says he thinks he's dreaming and then asks how else he could be here. The Duke touches the boy's hair and suggests he go back to sleep. Damian claims he woke him up and then announces he doesn't want to sleep anymore. Killian asks why, and he replies that it's because he thinks he'll disappear again, and also asks if the man has children. The gentleman asks in surprise why such a question suddenly arises, and the child explains that he was simply curious. The Duke says he has a son, and as far as he knows the boy's about his age. Damian claims he says this as if he doesn't really know him, while the man claims it's because he does. Killian says he doesn't like children, because they're noisy, unruly, and annoying. Hearing this, the boy is surprised, finding it odd considering he's an adult. The young gentleman does not understand, but it seems to him that he is the same child as he is a frightened little boy who wears an adult mask and then asks if he is a ghost. Hearing this, the Duke was surprised, and the child explained that his teacher once said that there are ghosts who do not understand that they have died, and they remained in their world because they have unfinished business, and until they finish it, the road to heaven is closed to them. Yes, Mian says that maybe he also died, but remained in their world because he wants to find his son, and then asks if they can then become friends because he will definitely help him since he saved him. The boy says he doesn't like children anymore, which means he doesn't like him either. The Duke objects and explains that he said he didn't like children, but he never said he didn't like him. The man says he'll let you be his friend. At that moment, the young gentleman thought he'd thought this man resembled someone even from their very first meeting. Damian looked at the gentleman in surprise and asked if it was by chance, then changed his mind and said that it was nothing, and then asserted that he was not allowing any more because he believed that friends should be equal. The Duke agrees with him and asks him to promise not to tell anyone about him, not even his mother since he's a ghost. He asks if he's forgotten about it. After all, if anyone finds out about him, he could disappear. The young gentleman agrees and says he'll keep his mouth shut. The man suggests he go to bed since it's late. Damian reminds him that he woke him up, and that's why he's wide awake, and then asks if they can talk a little longer. The gentleman says it's time for him to sleep, and the boy, surprised, asks how he knows his name. The child reflects on the fact that he thought that this man was his father because they were too similar, and it could not be otherwise. But if he really was a ghost who would disappear when he was found, he would be very upset and therefore would keep his thoughts to himself. The boy thought that he wanted to stay with him at least a little longer, and then fell asleep. Janak asks his lordship how the young master is. He says he just fell asleep and asks what he told Rowena. The secretary says that he was attacked by a homeless man, and in essence, that is true. But he did not say that he committed suicide with the help of a pill that he had in his mouth as soon as the nanny caught him. The Duke thought that this was not just some homeless person because the poison he used was the same one that killed Anna Eden, the woman who stole Miss Falone's ring and then died under mysterious circumstances. Killian asks about the incident at the zoo, and the man says that everything is also very suspicious because the wolf's cage was repaired very recently and all the locks were in perfect order, and therefore one can only assume that someone released him on purpose. The Duke asks if he thinks this is the work of one person. Janak replies that he can't say for sure, but he doesn't think it's the queen, as he believes she has no business doing such things on her own territory. The gentleman suggests that perhaps his ex-wife hired someone. The assistant reports that after the divorce, almost her entire family disowned her, and she began taking too many medications, so she simply doesn't have the means to organize such a thing. Killian reports that they have only one figure left, and Janot claims that his lordship already knows the answer, that it is Baron Benedict Sussex, because there is no one else. The man says that he can't get it into his head, because the Baron was his first assistant, and doesn't understand why he's doing something like that. The gentleman says that 5 years ago, his loyalty to him was somewhat excessive, and he thought that his dear gentleman was simply being manipulated by some woman. The Duke thought that he was afraid of being punished for his past crimes, but he assumed that he felt betrayed and that he had returned to Rowena. And then he says that it doesn't matter, because he went too far, and therefore will pay dearly for deciding to encroach on him. Time passed, and May became fox hunting season. After the incident with the Damian, Rowena tried not to go out too much, but she couldn't miss such an event. The maid, seeing her mistress off, assures her that she and the nanny will take good care of the young master. The lady thanks her and says that if anything happens to write immediately, and then leaves. The Duke says she looks upset and asks if she's really that worried about the baby. Hearing this, the protagonist is surprised and thinks she'd better watch her words now. The girl says that this is not the case, and then asks if Lady Veronica will also come to the event. Killian says he never thought she'd be so childishly jealous. The woman insists she's not jealous, but that doesn't mean she has to like her. The gentleman touched the girl's cheek, and she thought he'd just been teasing her. He apologized, explained that he'd lost his temper, and assured her that she shouldn't think about that lady anyway, since he didn't care about other women. The girl says that she still hasn't let go of the past, and thought about what if he had said these words 5 years ago, when he tore her tender girl's heart into a million pieces. The main character thought about what if he said that he had made the biggest mistake of his life, and that he was ready to marry only her, and then asked if it seemed to him that he was too late with this, since the past could no longer be changed. Killian says that now he at least knows what she was thinking, and then agrees with her that the past cannot be changed, and therefore he can only try to hide it under beautiful wrapping paper. The lady assures that she loves honesty, and the man reminds her that, as he already said, she can behave as brazenly as she wants. Rowena wonders if she could be like the favorite in romantic novels. He says that then he would become a stupid man, completely obsessed with his mistress, because in such novels, good always triumphs in the end. The lady says that the main character, briefly distracted by the favorite, after a while returns to the beautiful, kind princess, and the foolish favorite pays with her life for her sins. The girl says that if the same fate awaits her as these villains, she asks whether he will cry for her, and wonders whether he will remember the poor favorite whose life remains on these pages, or whether he will live happily ever after with his princess. Killian asks if she wants that. The protagonist explains that she's asking him because he wants honesty, since she's just a favorite and doesn't want him to find another woman and live happily ever after just because she's gone. The gentleman says that since she asked an honest question, he will give an honest answer, and then he says that the dead can no longer be brought back, and he will not hold on to them. Rowena says it's nothing surprising, as she expected such a cold response. Then she asks what his dead fiancé means to him, since the Duke of Devonshire decided to attend a social event for the first time in 5 years. They decided to throw a fox hunt this year, with all the posh royal spirit. The men's entertainment was the hunt itself, while women attended, as they would any other social event. Aristocratic women of all ages mingled while waiting for the hunt to end. The lady turns to Miss Falone and says that she is even more beautiful today than usual, and the main character claims that she is flattered. The Marchioness says the necklace looks expensive, and Rowena says it's a gift from the Duke. The woman says it's incredibly beautiful, which is probably why His Grace values it so highly. The Countess says that she is a little sorry that Her Majesty is not present today, and the girl agrees with her, because she thinks that there is such a magnificent event here. The Marquise says she heard that His Majesty leaves the palace only for official events. At this time, Veronica comes up to them and asks what the ladies are talking about, and also asks if she will be allowed to join in, and then turns to Lady Falone and says that she really wanted to talk to her. Rowena asks what it was about. The Marquise says that when they ran into each other, she failed to apologize properly and said something disrespectful. Hearing this, the Countess thought that disrespectful was putting it mildly. Veronica said she'd thought a lot about that day, and concluded that Miss Falone was wrong, and therefore apologized. Hearing this, the main character doesn't understand why she suddenly decided to apologize, or what came over her. And the lady, surprised, asks if she's apologizing for the incident when she ran into Miss Falone. The lady doesn't understand, but thinks that she's up to something. But anger is no friend to her and asks why she's asking for forgiveness if it was her fault, and then says that she's almost ashamed that such a lady is apologizing to her for such an insignificant reason. Hearing this, the marquise thought that she had not fallen for the trick and said that the lady was as kind as she was beautiful, and now she would be calmer. And then she took her leave. The lady says that she couldn't have handled the situation better and thinks that it turned out very elegantly, and the girl thought that this made her happy. Countess Rachel says that's enough for today and asks Miss Falone to stay because she wants to talk to her about something. The lady turns to the girl and praises her, and then says that she doesn't know why she suddenly decided to be soft. However, she suggests not giving her a reason to underestimate her. Rowana says she understands this too and suggests not to worry. The woman asks if the Duke said anything about it, and she replies that nothing. The Countess says that she doesn't sound very confident, and then asks why, since she is more than sure that he loves her very much. The main character tells the woman that she still hasn't rested after the trip, and she would really like to go back to her room and rest, and then asks if she will allow her to deviate. Countess Rachel, suggests meeting in the evening, and when the girl left, she thought that whenever she talks to her, she has a strange feeling that one day she will simply disappear, and she doesn't know where it comes from. Hertz Devonshire turns to the Countess, and she asks in surprise what brings him here, then informs him that Miss Falone has just gone to her chambers. He says he knows, and then says he has something he wants to ask her for. Melissa tells the lady that tomorrow is the last day, and asks what hairstyle she should do for the evening reception. Rowana says there's no need to worry too much about it, as it's a routine event. The maid claims that the queen is chosen on the final night. Hearing this, the lady asks in surprise. Melissa explains that she hasn't been in the capital for a long time and doesn't know about any new events. Then she explains that fox hunting is a men's event, so there's not much for women to do. So a couple of years ago, people decided to hold a queen election, and the woman who got the most votes on the last night would become the queen of the reception until the morning. The main character asks what the benefit of this is, and the maid explains that, until the end of the ball, she will be able to do whatever she wants, including choosing a man for the closing dance. Rowana says she understands, because she knows why Lady Veronica suddenly started acting this way. Then she explains that today, she showed up while they were dusting tea and suddenly decided to apologize. Hearing this, the maid asks why she's being so cunning and suggests she's probably trying to gain votes. The mistress says she has no doubt, because now she knows why she did it. Melissa says that there is no need to laugh about this, and then asks what if she is really chosen as queen, and suggests that suddenly she will do something bad. The lady says that they will already be in public, and then asks what she can do, because she believes that the worst is impossible. Melissa suggests that she might ask the Duke to be her partner for the closing dance. The maid says that her mistress isn't jealous at all, as she doesn't care about what's going on around her and knows no greed. At this time, the main character thought that it's not that she doesn't have it, because she just knows that it doesn't lead to anything. Ravana said she'd change herself and told the maid she could go. She then started to button her dress, but realized she couldn't reach it. At that moment, a gentleman entered the room, and the girl asked how the hunt had gone. He replied that it had been fine, and the lady asked if he would order something made from the foxes killed this time too. Killian says he was planning to, but the forester said silver foxes don't live here anymore. She says that's a shame. The Duke asks if it's true, and then says he thought she didn't like such cruelty. The girl, surprised, asks if he knew this, but still gave her the furs. The man explains that she was charmingly angry, while the woman insists it's cruel. The gentleman asks how things are with Lady Veronica. She replies that she's too old to have a little girl pulling her hair. Killian asks if she's going to let it slide. She demurs and says she'll fight back. The Duke smiled and said he gave her credit, as an older woman would have simply endured it. The lady asked what that meant, and then said it didn't matter, as she was completely exhausted and wanted to go to bed. A man grabs a girl by the hand and asks why she stopped saying that she loves him, and looks at him with the same gaze, but he feels something different in him, Killian tells her to forget it, as he thinks he shouldn't have mentioned it. Then he tells her they're returning to the capital early the day after tomorrow. The main character was surprised to hear this, and then said that there would be a ball tomorrow night. He said he thought she would be happy, because she would sooner return to her son. The lady doesn't understand why he started talking about Damian, and a question suddenly arose in her head that if he becomes interested in her son and finds out that he is his own son, then maybe he will change. Rowana thinks that this is a stupid question and does not understand why she just keeps thinking about such nonsense. And then she says that she is waiting for the election of the queen. The girl suggests they enjoy each other while they're here, then hugs and kisses him. And at that moment, she thinks she knows better than anyone that this man will never change. Countess Rachel tells Miss Filona that she looks as beautiful as ever today. She thanks her, and also comments that the Countess is especially beautiful today. The woman smiled and thought she was flattering her, then said that the Duke of Devonshire was nowhere to be seen and asked where he was. The main character explains that they arrived together, but he went off to talk to another gentleman. The Countess asks if he's the least bit worried, as he believes someone might steal his lovely partner. The girl asks when the election of the queen will begin, and the lady explains that it will be right after the banquet, and they still have time, and then asks Miss Phelan if she knew that during the elections you can get extra points. Rowana was surprised to hear this, and the Countess explained that the woman whose partner caught the most faces gets 3 additional votes, and the Queen's vote counts as 11 at once. Rachel says that this year the Duke of Devonshire caught the most foxes, but the Queen didn't come, and that means there's a very good chance that she'll be the ball queen tonight. The main character says that, to be honest, she is not very interested in this, and even if she is chosen, it will not give anything. Rachel objects and says that she won't agree with this, and then claims that tonight is special, and strongly advises everyone to try their best to get more points. The woman looked to the left and saw the Duke with Veronica, and said that this girl had her eye on the gentleman. At this point, the Marchioness says she hasn't seen the Duke of Devonshire in a long time. He claims they met just yesterday, and the girl explains that's not what she meant. Veronica says that when she was little, 10 years ago, they met in the royal palace, and asks if he remembers it. Killian apologized, and then said he doesn't remember people he meets by chance. She says it's okay, because she thinks the important thing is for him to remember tonight. At this time, the Duke looked at Rowena, and thought that she was looking straight at him. The waiter didn't see the main character, and knocked over the wine tray. The Duke quickly ran up to the lady, but managed to apologize to Lady Veronica, explaining that he needed to speak with his partner. Killian approached the girl, put his hand on her shoulder, and asked if she was okay. She said she was fine, and that her dress was just wet. The gentleman suggests that she go into the tent, because they need to talk, and at the same time, she can change her clothes. The man asks about the necklace he gave her. Rowana, surprised, asks what he's talking about. He explains it's the diamond one he recently put on her. The girl says that it should be in the box, and when she saw it, she thought that this kola is very beautiful, but she thinks that it doesn't suit her at all. Killian suggests wearing it today, and she says she wanted to choose something to match the dress. The gentleman asks if she will do things her way. The protagonist thinks he's trying to control her again, as if she were a thing that belongs to him. At this time, the man thought that if she could see her face, she still didn't understand that she couldn't control her emotions at all. And then he said that they would compromise. The Duke informs her that this scarf is made of silver fox fur, and that she can wear any dress she chooses, but on the condition that she also wears this scarf, as she believes it will look good with the necklace. The main character reflects on the fact that, as she thought, he hasn't changed a bit, but the only difference is that 5 years ago she was sitting in a cage, and now she's flying around it, chained by the leg, and this necklace presses on her neck like shackles. The Countess suggests Miss Filone move quickly, as the voting has already begun. The girl apologized, and then said she simply needed to change. Rachel reports that she is currently leading by 5 votes, and therefore thinks there is nothing to worry about, as she believes that if she wins, his lordship will be very happy. The man announces that it is time to announce the last vote, although he thinks that everyone already understands who won, and then announces that the last vote is leaving. At this moment, a servant announced that Her Majesty the Queen had arrived. The gentlemen were surprised to hear this, as they had thought she would not come. Rachel says that she is the Queen's chief maid of honor, and she is here on her behalf, and this means that they should treat her like the queen herself. Rowana asks why she's suddenly here. The lady-in-waiting informs her that she's here on behalf of the queen. Due to her poor physical and mental state, she was unable to come but decided to lend her voice to Lady Veronica. The host says that the result is a one-vote majority, and Lady Veronica is elected queen of the festival. The Marquise, delighted to hear this, then thanks him and says she is very flattered. The host asks Her Majesty what her first decree will be. She says she would like to choose a man to spend the night with her. The man says it's impossible to choose between a married or engaged man, and asks if she knows that Veronica says she thinks everyone already knows she'll choose Duke Killian Devonshire, and then asks if he agrees. The host says that, as stated, if a man is neither engaged nor married, he cannot go against the Queen's orders. The Duke announces that, unfortunately, he must decline, and reveals that he is already engaged to Miss Falone. Hearing this, the Lord was surprised, and Veronica asked since when Miss Falone was his fiancée, and screamed, saying that this was some kind of nonsense, since they didn't even have an official ceremony, and it was absolutely against the rules. Countess Rachel says that in fact she was, and that his lordship told her everything in advance, and therefore asks to be allowed to clarify. Rachel reports that during an engagement ceremony, a gentleman gives a lady his mother's jewelry, and the lady accepts it and wears it. The lady says that the necklace that Miss Philo is wearing right now used to belong to the Duchess of Devonshire, although it probably wasn't official, but they are already engaged. Killian turns to Rowana and asks what's wrong with her, and if this isn't what she always wanted. The main character was surprised, because she doesn't remember when she wanted to get married and become his wife, have children, and live happily. She dreamed about this before. Lady Di thinks that this is a fairy tale that she forgot about when she realized that his love is just an illusion, and then says that she wants to announce something and asks if he will allow it. The man says she can do whatever she wants. The main character turns to the gentleman and asks for a moment of their attention. Rowana says that, as they all heard, she is engaged to the Duke of Devonshire, but there has not yet been an official ceremony, and then she says that she will be in the Lops Islands in 3 months, and therefore hope to see them all there. The lady says in surprise that if they are really engaged, then Miss Falona will become a duchess, and asserts that they will of course come, and then congratulates them, because she considers it an honor for them to receive an invitation. The main character thought that, just as Killian had planned, everyone present would witness her death. Rowana asks the Duke why he did it. He claims it was because she wanted it. She agrees, then says he simply caught her off guard in public, and that she didn't agree to this. She asks why he didn't warn her beforehand. Killian asks if she agreed, even though he told her in advance. She asks why he suddenly decided to marry her. The man explains that this is because he realized that 5 years ago, there was a serious misunderstanding, and he was told that she was cheating on him with a man named William Zeno. Hearing this, the girl objects and asks how he could even think that, and the man asks what connects them then. The lady explains that she was writing a book at the time, and she sent him the manuscript, and he contacted her, saying that he had potential, and that was the only reason she met him. Killian asks why she didn't tell him about it. Lady explains that it was because she knew he wouldn't approve since he was a tyrant, and Gertrude was the first to sound the alarm. The Duke says that at first, he thought that she was behind all this, but during the interrogation, she insisted until the very end that it was her plan. But after she left the mansion, she was finished off, and it looked like a suicide. The gentleman says Gertrude was killed, then shows her the ring and asks if she remembers it. He explains that the woman who stole him was killed in the same way, and the criminal must have been trying to contact her. The main character thought that the criminal was the man who 5 years ago took advantage of her naivety in order to falsely accuse her. And this man even committed murder in order to distance her from the Duke. Killian reports that this is Baron Benedict Sussex, and he thinks that he did not want her to be near him, because he believes that this man is one of those people who try to get rid of any threat, even hypothetical. The lady, surprised, says she can't believe it's the Baron. The gentleman explains that he's fled in the other direction and plans to get rid of him as soon as he finds him, so he asks her for forgiveness. At this point, the girl thought that even though the Baron had blamed her for everything, she didn't understand what difference that made, since she believed him and discarded her like a pile of trash. Ravana says that she has dreamed countless times of him apologizing to her for what he did, and dreamed of him finding out the truth and how he would sincerely and heartfeltly apologize, saying that he was to blame for what happened. The lady understands that these are pathetic dreams that she held onto until the very end, but he didn't even say that he regretted what happened. The girl says she's very tired and suggests he do as he pleases, both with the Baron and with the engagement and everything else. He says he was very surprised when she said she wanted to spend the night on the Lops Islands. Rowana reminds him that she already said she only has bad memories of that place and she wants to rewrite them. He says that if they are good memories, then he will definitely give them to her. The girl remembered her uncle's words that there was a way to escape, and he would do everything in his power, but she must ask the Duke to take her there on the appointed date, because that was where she would die. Hearing this, the main character is surprised and asks how she could die. Her uncle says she knows that every summer, the southern islands are hit by brutal storms. Jeremy thought about how, a few years ago, while researching literature about the southern islands for a novel, he came across a record of the Lops Islands. It told of a boy who got caught in it and was later found safe and sound on the other side of the island. The author conducted research and discovered that due to the unique shape of the island ocean, currents weaken in a certain area and flow directly to the other side of the island. The documents were so old, he thinks even the islanders don't know about this cave. His uncle says there will be storms this year too, and they'll take advantage of the weather to find a potential witness and sail away from the shore while the weather isn't too bad. The man says that when a storm starts, they will jump into the ocean together, and everyone will think that the boat simply capsized. Hearing this, the girl objects, saying it's too dangerous, and then asks what will happen to her son. He says he'll keep him safe, and if the recording is accurate and everything really happens, there shouldn't be any problems. Rowana says that he will also be in danger, but Uncle claims that only Killian is in danger, Devonshire, and then claims that this is her only chance to escape, and she must do it now or never. The lady considered that if she missed this opportunity, she would remain Killian's puppet for the rest of her days, but she decided she didn't care because she didn't care what happened to her, and then she announced that she agreed. The next day, a child came running to the Rowan, and she asked if he had fun with his uncle, and also wondered if he had forgotten to study. The teacher says that naturally, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and he is good at writing all over his mother. Jeremy says that he read her novel, which Melissa showed him, and it is better than he expected, and he will say that more than that is enough to send it to print. Hearing this, the girl was surprised, and then claimed that this manuscript was already 5 years old, and it was good only because she constantly made changes. The teacher asks if she ever thought about publishing it. Her niece explains that she didn't even think about it and simply wrote it, but she understands that the novel is where it all started, and she doesn't regret a thing. The main character realizes that 5 years ago, her favorite pastime was writing. The uncle turns to the boy and says he saw his mother and finished his homework, so he suggests they go play outside. Damian says that sounds good, and the teacher suggests he change and wait outside. Jeremy tells Rowena that he saw the headlines and asks if he can explain where the news of his engagement to the Duke came from. The lady explains that she tried to avoid it, but he didn't care one bit whether she wanted it or not. The uncle says he thought the man was a dog, but it turns out he's also rabid, and then asks when the ceremony is. The main character explains that she'll be on the Lops Islands next summer. She then explains that she had to get there somehow, and if there are many witnesses to her death, no one will be able to disprove it. Rowana claims that no one will question her, and that a convincing tragedy requires a worthy audience, and then announces that her wedding dress will become her burial attire. The nanny asks the young gentleman why he's so happy since they always play ball. The boy replies that he's never played with the teacher before. The head maid tells the nanny that the woman who was supposed to replace her today is sick, and that's why her sister has come. Then she claims that everything will be fine with him. At this time, Damian threw the ball, and the puppy ran after it. When the boy ran after the puppy, he saw Killian and surprised called him Mr. Ghost. The child asks if ghosts can go out into the sunlight and also wonders if they can fly. The gentleman claims he's confused ghosts with vampires. The Duke asks if he played as a child, knowing that kicking a ball around with friends is a lot of fun. The child replies that he usually plays alone here, then insists it doesn't matter, and offers to teach the gentleman how to play. Damian insists that a good dad should know how to play ball, But the man thanks him and turns out to be. The child asks if he's ashamed because he can't play, and then says that his mother always said that no one is perfect. Everyone has flaws, and everyone has people they cherish. Killian asks what else his mother said. The boy says that if he plays with him, he might remember, because Mr. Diffon says that fresh air clears the mind. The butler informs Miss that he's almost finished compiling the guest list for the engagement ceremony. She agrees and thanks him for his help, but the man claims that this is his job and says that there is no need to treat one so respectfully since she is almost the mistress of the house. The lady objects and says that it is not yet, and believes that servants should be respected. And the man says that he never ceases to be amazed by her because she is modest, delicate, and sensitive, and he is sorry that he could not help her 5 years ago and always wanted to apologize for that. The butler says that if I may say frankly, his lordship is not the best person, and he is sure that she has already become very close to him, but he has served him since his birth, and no one knows him better than he does. The servant reports that when a master severs ties with someone, his cruelty exceeds all bounds, and this has earned him universal respect, admiration, and fear. However, he believes he lacks something crucial: love. Dvoretsky says that there should be love between a parent and a child, between a man and a woman, and all his life he lacked precisely this feeling that ordinary people constantly share with each other. His lordship's father, the former duke, died in an accident, and soon after his mother returned to her homeland, but she never returned. Rowena says she's never heard of this. The man claims that even without parents, Mr. Devonshire managed well, yet many people coveted the young heir's wealth. The man reports that he was constantly surrounded by sycophants and people who wanted to get rid of him, and he is almost certain that such unpleasant company influenced his development as a person. But even now, every time he sees his lordship, he remembers the little lonely boy. And let everyone be afraid of him, but his heart bleeds. But now he sees hope that the look softens when he looks at her and asks if she noticed it. The butler says that every time he sees them together, he begins to believe that soon everything will change a lot, and he doesn't know how to thank her. Hearing this, the main character thought that perhaps his feeling was an obsession, a desire to possess nothing more, and could in no way be called love. The servant says he's been keeping this information to himself all this time and asks if the mistress is tired, advising her to rest. Rowan suggests he take care of himself too. The main character remembered the butler's words and thought that she needed to hold out until her room. And the maid informed Miss that Mr. Jenock asked her to meet him in the garden. The gentleman's assistant tells the lady that his lordship wants work on her portrait to begin today, and as she knows, this is the custom of the Devonshire house. Jenock approaches Rowena and asks if she's okay. She replies that she's just feeling a little nauseous, and the man suggests they do it tomorrow, as she's not feeling well right now. The girl thought that she would no longer run away and would come face to face, and not only the portrait, but nothing would shake her. The process turned out to be longer than the main character expected, and every day for a month, the artist spent 2 hours on just one sketch. Afterwards, using exquisite brushstrokes, he created a warm, vibrant background and details of his elegant dress, and all that remained was to paint her face. Dvoretsky informs the gentleman that the artist said he was waiting for that perfect smile, and he refuses to finish the portrait until he sees it, and then says that his passion for his work deserves praise. The servant says that the engagement will be in 3 months, and the portrait should be ready by then, but he is not sure that he will meet the deadline.